Julia Garner stars as a struggling dancer who's drawn in by dark forces in the new psychological thriller Apartment 7A. Buy it on digital or stream it now on Paramount Plus. Rated R. Head to ParamountPlus.com/Apartment7A to try it free.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beat your price. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beat your price.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Slashers, huh? What's your favorite scary movie?
Not that one.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking There's Some Wood For You, Bitch. We're talking The Girl with the Giant Come On Me Tits. Why is she dressed like a Mennonite? And we're talking Cool Girls. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking I Wax Strip My Pussy Raw.
Oh boy. Welcome back to the feminist agenda.
I had to say that because there's no way I'll ever say that again in my life, just like organically. So, yes,
you could wax your back pussy.
Well, actually, yeah, I don't refer to my asshole as my pussy, but I know that a lot of gay porn actors do. So do gay men out there, do you call your asshole your pussy? Your bussy? Your mussy?
Yeah.
So gross. Yes, everyone, we are discussing David Fincher's adaptation of Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl. And we are on week number 2 of our Divas and Anniversary theme. And I think this is both, Joe.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I paused because I was like, and keep going, I'm loving it. Oh. But no, you are absolutely right. Yes, Amy Dunn, unabashedly a total diva icon. And then, yeah, this is, the 10th anniversary of Gone Girl.
I cannot believe that. Like, it's weird. 2014 is 10 years ago. I'm just going through this like weird existential crisis where I'm like, what is time?
Sure. I mean, wait until you hear what film we're covering next year for its 50.
Oh my God. Well, I wasn't alive when that film came out.
Okay, there you go. For context, right?
But no, so Joe, did you read this book?
I did read the book, and I watched this movie when it came out in theaters.
So did I. And y'all, I don't think I can overstate how much of a phenomenon this book was. Like, this book came out in 2012. I was working at a wine bar, like I was a year out of college, and I was a host. And I had my Kindle like in like a little pocket in the host stand that I would pull out and read when it wasn't busy, because I was like trying to get through this book as fast as I could.
Oh yeah, it is the definition of a page turner.
It really is. But I mean, I don't know how you heard about it. Like I had heard about Gillian Flynn's books, but I had never read any of them. And it was you'll never believe the twist. And so that was, of course, where I was like, okay, I got to pick up this book.
Yeah, I think I kind of read a little bit with some people at work. So I had a number of female colleagues, and they were all over this. And because of that, I ended up reading this. And then I think I went back and read either Sharp Objects or Dark Places. And of course, both have been adapted into other texts. But if you like this kind of dark feminist vibe, this is basically what Flynn does.
Yeah, very much so. She really excels at writing flawed female characters. And I think I did the exact same thing. I read Gone Girl first, and then I went back and I read Sharp Objects, because spoiler alert, everyone, that book is like 200 pages long. It's a really quick read.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite out of the 3?
I like Dark Places because it has almost a true crime amateur sleuth vibe to it, but I do think it's maybe It's rockily plotted, we'll say it that way.
So I'm actually really happy to hear you say that because, and granted, I haven't read any of these books since I first read them, 10 years ago. Right. But Dark Places was my favorite as well. I loved Dark Places, but weirdly enough, it has the worst adaptation. The only one that I would say is not good out of all three of these.
Yeah, I think it's tough because Gone Girl, unabashed classic, and then Sharp Objects, which I'm actually covering on White Ladies in Crisis with Jen Addams and Gina Radcliffe. We're going through that episode by episode, and it so benefits from being a TV show. It doesn't hurt that it's also directed by Jean-Marc Vallée, who, of course, is like, but also
rest in peace.
But such a fucking talented director. And then I don't even remember who did Dark Places, but it felt like that one was the botched adaptation.
Yeah, so there's so much going on in Dark Places and the novel that it's just really hard to condense it into. It's an hour and 52 minutes, but I think when you look at Gone Girls as 2.5 hour length, you're kind of like, oh, maybe it didn't need that. But Joe, you might be happy to know that January of this year, it was announced that Flynn would serve as co-creator, writer, and co-showrunner on a new limited series of Dark Places for HBO.
Oh, okay. That totally makes sense. Also, I'm just going to say, as much as I love Flynn, it feels like half of her projects end up becoming not dissimilar to Brian Fuller projects, where you get super excited, can't wait to see the new thing, and then it just doesn't always come together.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about that Utopia show?
I mean, that one... Yeah.
At least had a season.
Yeah, it's not good, but she's been attached to a couple of other projects that just never quite seem to get off the ground. And I mean, it's frustrating just because I really like her tone and her vibe. So I'm always excited for new stuff. And then when it doesn't come about, I get disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, she hasn't written a full novel since Gone Girl. Like, she did a short story. I didn't know she co-wrote the movie Widows.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah.
And when you watch that movie, you can tell.
I fully believe it. But yeah, it's a thing where I'm like, oh, just give us another book, Gillian. Come on.
Well, she doesn't need to because she's working so actively in TV and movies now.
I know, but it's like, I
know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go into some of the production of this. I actually did focus a lot on Gillian Flynn because I just respect, man. Like, someone going from the world of freelance writing to novel writing to film writing, like, go you.
It's the fucking dream, right? Her and Jeff Jensen.
Oh, I know, right? God, the Entertainment Weekly group, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, so just to repeat some information, Gone Girl is an adaptation of Gillian Flynn's 2012 novel of the same name. But yes, she began her career working as a feature writer freelance for Entertainment Weekly in 1998 before being promoted to a TV critic when I guess one of them left and they needed a quick replacement.
Sure.
But while she was doing that, she started writing her first novel, Sharp Objects, on nights and weekends and on planes when she was traveling for, like, junkets and press tours.
Oh my God, that sounds exhausting.
Like, literally when I'm like, I'm on a work trip, like, that's the work I'm doing. I'm not doing other work on this.
I'm not doing work on top of work on top of... Wait, no, I think that is what I do. Never mind, scratch it.
Hire me, y'all. I'm not lazy.
I'm exhausted, but perennially busy?
Exactly. But interestingly enough, she didn't even consider writing a novel until she read Dennis Lehane's Mystic River, a novel that she read it in a single night because just so she could get to the end saying, oh, this is how you do it. You start with a character, you go deep and dark, and you craft a mystery. And I've never read Mystic River, but I have seen the adaptation that Clint Eastwood did, and I do really like it. I see a lot of similarities, at least in the structure, maybe?
Yeah, as soon as you said it, I could see it, but I'm with you. I've owned Mystic River forever, and I've never cracked it open, but yeah, that movie is great.
Yeah, got it. So yeah, and thus, Sharp Objects was born, which revolves around this reporter who was returned to her hometown in Missouri to cover, like, a series of serial killings, but this was released in 2006 to critical acclaim. So immediately, it's like, okay, you're kind of on the map, but she's also still working for Entertainment Weekly at this time.
Yeah, you can't just quit your job because you've got one big hit.
Yeah, exactly. So next up is 2009's Dark Places, which, as I said, my personal favorite. But it's an in cold blood-esque tale of a woman who investigates whether or not her incarcerated brother was truly responsible for the murder of their family in the 1980s. And while she was writing this novel, so the book comes out in 2009, but in December of 2008, which is around the time she finishes writing Dark Places, she was laid off by Entertainment Weekly because what was happening in 2008, but
the recession.
The recession. I don't know why I'm laughing. I was a part of it.
Because it's a dark time, but now we can laugh about it.
We can laugh about it. But by March of 2009, her path became clear because Dark Places would soon be published, and Random House, the publisher, asked her for another book. And it should come as no surprise that the lead character in that book, which would of course become Gone Girl, would also be laid off from his writing job.
Right, yes.
One thing I didn't know either, though, is that while she was writing it, this is from an interview I found with her with Vulture, but she was hung up on this 1943 film, Leave Her to Heaven. And I was like,
oh my God.
Have you seen this?
Oh, Trace, you would love this movie.
So that's the thing. So I was like, oh, what is this movie? So I read the plot and I was like, oh, it follows.
Oh, no, you spoiled yourself.
No. I didn't like read the whole plot. I read like the IMDb plot. Mm-hmm. But no, it follows a socialite who marries a prominent novelist, which spurs a violent, obsessive, and dangerous jealousy in her. And I can definitely see some of the parallels between the we call her a villainous female character in that film, and Gone Girls is Amy.
Yes, indeed.
But other influences for her were Zoe Heller's novel Notes on a Scandal, which, by the way, that film adaptation.
Stay fucking tuned.
And, of course, Edward Albee's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Which I've still never seen.
Okay, I haven't either, and it's one of those things where I just see it brought up so much from when filmmakers talk about film, and it seems like such an influential piece that I'm like, okay, I gotta see this movie. Like, I have to see what this is. Or maybe the play it's based on.
Or both.
So Gone Girl, the book, was released in June of 2012. And, as I said, this was a phenomenon. It took over the entire world. And to this day, it is Flynn's best-selling book. So it was only a matter of time before a film adaptation entered the conversation.
Right.
In fact, it was, I believe, announced like a month later in July of 2012. But the deal was in place before this. So
okay, so they knew what they had before the book even hit the stands.
Yes. So enter new name, Leslie Dixon, who was the screenwriter of such films as Overboard and co-wrote Mrs. Doubtfire and the Freaky Friday remake with Lindsay Lohan.
Okay.
I know.
I mean, I like all those movies, but also not a good tonal fit.
Right. I also didn't know a woman wrote Overboard, which I was like, okay, good, because I love Overboard, but I understand the...
She has not aged well, that film.
I understand the critiques of it. But no, so Dixon had read the manuscript of Gone Girl back in 2011, and she brought it to Reese Witherspoon in December of that year.
Yes, I forget that Reese Witherspoon was involved in this, but in a way, it's a perfect fit. But then you also think, oh, Reese has such a sunny disposition. Oh, she's got a dark side.
Well, she does, and that's the thing where I'm kind of like, I mean, Freeway, but she hasn't really done a role like that, since Freeway.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, Witherspoon brought this manuscript to her friend, Bruna Papandrea, and along with Flynn's agent, they all used the manuscript to meet with studios in early 2012. So again, this is like 4 or 5 months before the book even comes out.
I love it.
And important to note, at this time, it was Witherspoon who was going to play Amy in the film adaptation. And I do remember when this came out, and I was so excited because I thought we were going to get Reese Witherspoon playing this type of role again.
Yeah, dark Witherspoon.
Yes. Okay, so book comes out in June. July of 2012, 20th Century Fox, RIP, optioned the book rights to Gone Girl. But Flynn was savvy, and part of the deal she made was that she would write the first draft of the screenplay.
Right. Which is an interesting development because I feel like I've seen this go both ways where sometimes the novelist is too reverent to their own text and then you get a very compromised film, and sometimes it goes over like gangbusters.
I actually wonder if her work as a TV critic was like helped her do this. I don't want to say better, but like she knew the rules. Like maybe she was like pretending like she was critiquing her own film as, okay, well, if I was writing a review of this, what would I say? And that's how she kind of went through stuff.
I mean, think about it. I'm not going to say you and I are ever going to move into writing films or making films or something like that, but we have an inherent sense because we've looked at them and critiqued so many of them. We have an idea what does work and what doesn't work.
Yeah. I thank you. But so she submitted this first draft of the screenplay to the studio in December of 2012. And at this point, no director was attached to the project.
Right.
So the day after Christmas 2012, December 26th, she got a call asking her to hop on a plane to go meet with David Fincher in Los Angeles. She lives in Chicago with her husband, by the way. But
sidebar, can you just imagine getting the call, hey, I know you're recovering from Christmas.
Yeah.
Come meet David fucking Fincher.
Right? And so not being an idiot, she did just that. And this is the interesting thing. So the meeting went very, very well. Fincher and Flynn click fairly quickly, and they just talked a lot. And, you know, we've talked a lot, I feel like, about tyrant directors recently, and I think it's fair to say that Fincher, maybe not a tyrant, but he's kind of in that ballpark. He's a perfectionist, let's say.
Right. He has a very clear idea. He has certain types of projects that seem to attract him. But yeah, he very much gives off a controlling kind of vibe.
Controlling, demanding, 50 takes for every shot, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he is very demanding with his actors. Like, I have heard some stories, I think even with Ben Affleck on this thing, because there's an anecdote where Ben Affleck, like, his character was supposed to wear a Yankees cap, and Affleck said, absolutely not. And they had to stop filming for 4 days. While
Until
Fincher
they could resolve it.
Basically, Fincher was talking to Affleck's agent saying, well, what can he wear? And it's funny in the commentary, because, by the way, the Blu-ray of this film, the only bonus feature is a commentary with Fincher.
Which is so weird. Like, are we not overdue for some kind of deluxe edition?
I mean, it does come with an Amazing Amy booklet. So, like, you do get, like, a paperback copy of an Amazing Amy book.
Oh,
but
fuck, like, I care about that shit.
I know. I mean, it's kind of funny because it's called Amazing Amy the Tattletale, about how she learns to take responsibility for her mistakes. But it's like...
something this film doesn't really tackle.
Well, and that's funny. But anyway, but on this commentary, I honestly, I could not tell if he was being serious or not, but he was like, I just thought that was really unprofessional of Ben.
Okay.
But like, he still likes him, but it was like, with this fucking hat, he was like, that was very unprofessional.
Yeah. I mean, poor Ben.
Poor Ben. But nevertheless, the way he is with actors is not the way he is with writers.
Okay.
Flynn said he gave her amazing notes. He really knew where and how the story worked. And whenever she had a crisis of confidence, when she wasn't sure if she was on the right track or not, he gave her reasons to not second guess herself. And in fact, during the production of the final screenplay, Fincher and Flynn engaged in an intensive back and forth working relationship where she would send him pages and pages and pages of writing, which he then reviewed, and he would then discuss those pages with her by telephone. And sometimes the scenes were rewritten like a dozen times, while other times scenes were left unaltered, but they just seemed to really enjoy working with each other and picking each other's brains.
Okay. It sounds like a true creative collaboration.
Absolutely. Now, it was at this point that Reese Witherspoon was out as Amy.
Okay, do you know why? Because I've always been curious.
So I found a quote, and it's a little diplomatic, but this is a quote exactly like from Witherspoon. I think it was in maybe like October of 2014, like a couple months after the movie came out. But she says, whenever David Fincher says he wants to do a project, you just sit back and say, whatever you want to do. We had a long conversation where he was like, you're not right for it, and this is why. And I actually completely agree with him.
Sure. I believed it all the way up until that last line.
Well, and so I'll get to Pike in a minute, because I think maybe the reasons why he liked Pike is maybe why he didn't want Witherspoon for the part. But nevertheless, Witherspoon does stay on board as producer for this movie.
Right.
So how does Pike get cast? Because I was kind of shocked that there weren't like a bunch of there wasn't a lot of information about this. Per Fincher, at Gone Girl's New York Film Festival premiere, he says, and I'm going to just quote him directly again, Rosamund was someone that I had seen in 4 or 5 different movies over 10 years. And I think one of them, was like Pride and Prejudice, but I don't know. Like, do you remember when you first saw Rosamund Pike, Joe?
Yeah, so it's funny because obviously this is the big breakout film for her, but I remember her as the female villain from Die Another Day.
Okay, that's a big one for me too. I didn't realize that was her feature film debut.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm,
okay, interesting.
Yeah, that movie's not very good, but her fight scene with Halle Berry is very good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he says, I never got a beat on her. I never got a sense of who she was. And I pride myself on being able to watch actors and sort of know instinctively what their utility belt is. And I don't have that with Rosamund. I didn't know what she was building off of. There was an opacity there, and it was interesting.
Okay, so she's a chameleon is what we're saying, and he couldn't get a read on her her, which makes her perfect for this multifaceted character who is kind of everything to everyone.
Yes, and I think that he wasn't getting that from Witherspoon. And I think there's something to be said where it's like, well, she's an actor. She can disappear into the role. But what I gather is, especially with this movie and being about how much it's about the media, I do think he thought about like the actual like innate qualities the actors had before he cast them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because, as you said, we've talked a lot about demanding, controlling directors and particularly their perspective on stars this year. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but wonder if you look at this and say, we don't want someone with the audience's preconceived notions like Reese Witherspoon, where she is America's fucking sweetheart. It'd be like casting Julia Roberts and then having to try to market that as, oh, it's an unexpected subversive role.
Which I would totally watch.
Well, yes. But that's because we like it when stars go outside of their kind of established boundaries. But I think for a lot of folks, if you say, I'm going to see the new Reese Witherspoon, you're not expecting dark Witherspoon.
Yeah, absolutely not. But so according to Pike, though, she had no idea if Fincher talked to other people or if he even auditioned other people. And and again, I'm kind of cross-referencing this with Fincher's commentary, which is surprisingly not very technical. He sounds like he's just chilling, like it's very anecdotal.
Okay.
But nevertheless, he says that, they were talking about actresses, but he kept going back to Rosamund Pike. So I don't know if anyone else auditioned for this role, but apparently he works under a shroud of secrecy. So again, Pike doesn't even know what he did. But for Pike, she had Skyped with him for 6 hours. And
oh my God.
Then she flew to St. Louis to have dinner with him. And she said her agents didn't even know that she'd gone on this meeting.
What?
But while she was sitting in the departure lounge at the airport, she opened her emails and there was an email from with the Gone Girl script, with For Your Eyes Only written beneath the title. And I don't even think at this point she knew for sure what he was talking to her about.
Right. It's just come meet Fincher in St. Louis. Oh, by the way, read this on the plane.
Well, and she's not talking to an associate. She's not talking to a casting director. She's talking to Fincher. He's just yep, I'm hands-on with this type of shit.
Jesus.
So she flew to St. Louis, not knowing what he wanted, but she knew she was being auditioned. But it wasn't a normal audition. They talked for more than 5 hours over dinner until 1 o'clock in the morning. And
again, I say no to that.
Well,
this sounds exhausting.
And honestly, I feel like I'd rather have a 5-hour dinner with David Fincher than audition for David Fincher.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, I would agree with that.
As long as the food and booze keeps coming.
Yeah. I mean, if you're vibing, right, it almost sounds like, oh, go on a date with David Fincher.
Yeah.
We're going to get a read for each other. And if it all works out, hi, welcome to the movie.
100%. And so, she knew she was being auditioned, but she knew it wasn't a normal audition. So in her words, what he was doing was dissecting. He's talking about her layers, like Pike's layers. He's saying what's required for the part, like, hey, are you going to be okay being naked, covered in blood for weeks at a time? Are you going to be okay, like gaining 15 pounds and losing 15 pounds over the course of 2 weeks, which is what she did, by the way.
Oh, no.
He's seeing if she's right for the part and if they've got the balls, and these are her words, to go on this pretty physically and mentally demanding journey.
Truly that.
So once filming began, back to Flynn, actually. Flynn was allowed to be on set as much and as often as she wanted, which...
That's nice.
We've said many times, that's not usually the case with this stuff, but...
No, and if it's like your first big film where you're doing your screenplay for the very first time, what a dream.
Well, and love that. Well, and the thing is, though, Flynn points out, the script was locked by this point, so she was merely on set as a tourist to watch things, but Fincher would still talk to her, but there were no changes to the script during this process.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just be so worried as a writer, what does this actually look like when you put actors into the characters whom I had complete control over? I think I personally would have a lot of difficulty losing that kind of agency, even if I know that that's how it normally works. But being on set would be, I think, reassuring and simultaneously exciting.
Well, and that's the thing. I saw another quote from Flynn where she was like, it's so scary as an author to sell the rights to your book, and you have to kind of just let go of it and just take the check and run, is apparently the advice she was given a lot. Which is interesting because when you hear her talking about the Dark Places adaptation before it came out, she talks so highly about it, but I can't find a lot of quotes from her after the movie came out.
I mean, the fact that we're talking about a potential new TV show tells me everything I need to know.
Yeah. And with her completely behind it, too.
Yes.
But, so Gone Girl began filming in September of 2013 in Missouri. So they did shoot on location.
Okay.
Lasted for about 5 weeks. And Fincher, being Fincher, he took, on average, and I sounded like I was joking earlier, but he literally took as many as 50 takes for each scene.
The new Kubrick.
So it comes out on October 3rd, 2014, against fellow new release Annabelle and a Left Behind movie starring Nicolas Cage, which I did not know existed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bet that's a dynamite one.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. It opens just barely in the number 1 spot with $37.5 million, where Annabelle was in the number 2 spot with $37.1 million.
I mean, that fucking old hag doll, she has money behind her.
I remember I was in Lubbock when this came out, and me and my husband and his mother did a double feature of Annabelle and Gone Girl.
That is not a complimentary double bill.
I think we did Annabelle first. I think
you'd have to.
I think you have to, yeah. But, however, where Annabelle fell 57% in its second weekend, again, not uncommon for a horror film, Gone Girl only fell 26% its second weekend.
Hello, money.
Landing it in the number 1 spot again. Although I will say, though, for 2 R-rated movies to, like, open in the number 1 and 2 spots with, like, $37 million a piece, like, that's kind of great.
Yeah.
But, so Gone Girl will go on to gross $167 million domestically and $201 million internationally for a worldwide total of $369 million against a production budget of $61 million. So this was a commercial success.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you think that budget is a little bit high? Like, that to me is the David Fincher effect, because obviously this is an incredibly popular bestseller that we're adapting, but still, it's a bit of an unknown quantity. Like, your star is Ben Affleck, but he is a duped idiot, like, man-child, and then you've got this unknown, untested female lead.
Well, but that's the thing with Pike, though. I mean, I agree with you. I would say she was maybe not unknown, but it was a thing where, like, you would see her, but you wouldn't be able, like, there was no one that was like, oh yeah, Rosamund Pike, like her.
No.
Like, I mean, we probably were because we knew some of her work, but but like general audiences didn't get that.
It's character actor at best.
Yeah. But I actually thought 61 million was a little low, if only because of the size of this cast. And like, it's not a lot of, I mean, you have character actors in here, but still, like, I just figured with a cast of this many prominent actors, like, I just assumed it was going to be a bigger budget, but.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, anyway, it made 6 times its money back, so it's fine.
Yeah. Gone Girl 2 coming in 5 years.
Well, okay, that's the other thing too. So when this came out, you know, they were doing the press rounds and people were asking Gillian Flynn, like, would you do a sequel? And she was like, yeah, if like everyone, like if the same cast and crew came back, absolutely. And Fincher wanted to do it, sure, absolutely. And I'm like,
because honestly, like, I would love to see these two raise a baby.
Dude, okay, I was like, legacy sequel, thought, give us 15 years, give us like them raising a teenager, absolutely.
Oh God, is that just like Baby Dexter though?
Well, no, but, well, and that's the thing, though. Would you want it to focus on, I guess you'd have to have it focus on the kid, because you can't, like, redo focusing on Nick and Amy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have to be, have they raised a sociopath?
Or it's maybe the kid finding out the truth about what
Mom
happened 15 years ago, you know? I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Folks, tell us which version you would rather have.
Yes. But yeah, so on top of being a commercial success, it was also a critical one. We are looking at an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 8 out of 10, which we don't get many of those in this podcast.
No.
And over on Letterboxd, it's got an 8.2 out of 10. So it should come as no surprise that it entered the Oscar conversation pretty quickly, though it would only earn 1 nomination, and that was a Best Actress nomination for Pike, who would sadly, I mean, she would lose to Julianne Moore for her performance in Still Alice. Coincidentally, though, Reese Witherspoon was also nominated in this category that year for Wild.
Oh, interesting. Also, I don't think I've seen Still Alice.
That's the one where she has Alzheimer's and Kristen Stewart plays her daughter.
Oh, you told me about this, but I've not seen it.
Yeah. I mean, look, she's great in it.
Okay.
But I think it was a thing where it was one of those things where it's like, I think everyone really thought Pike was going to win, but
yeah, I remember.
I don't want to be like, oh, it was kind of like it's time we gave Julianne Moore an Oscar winner, like, award, but like, that's kind of what it felt. I mean, she's, again, great in the movie. It just felt like all arrows were pointing to Pike that year.
Right. Yeah. Well, everybody knows the Oscars are a fickle thing.
Yeah, it's very political.
Yes.
But yeah, it did fare better at the Golden Globes, where it was nominated for Best Actress for Pike, Best Director for Fincher, Best Screenplay for Flynn, and Best Score for Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, but it didn't win any of them.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the second collaboration between Fincher and Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor?
I think it's the third, because I think they did Social Network and Dragon Tattoo first.
Oh, they did. Oh, I forgot the Dragon Tattoo was before this.
Right? But yeah, so he does these two major literary adaptations within 2 years of each other.
Wild.
Yeah. Which I think he was just reading a lot of books, because...
Yeah.
I mean, I think he reached out about doing the movie, but in that commentary, he says, while he was reading the book, he kept convincing himself not to do it for a multitude of reasons. And it was boiled down to realism and stuff like that. Because apparently Fincher is very much into it has to be believable. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's not going to make a space movie or a fantasy or something like that.
Well, but he would. I mean, he made Alien 3, but if he did, he wants everything to be as realistic as possible. So in Gone Girl, I guess the way, again, I can't remember, but the way Amy drains her blood in the novel, it was a big sticking point between Fincher and Flynn, where he was like, that's not realistic. I don't buy that, which is why he changes it to, her putting an IV in her arm for the movie.
Yeah, because in the book, it absolutely does not work.
So that's really all I have. I do want to mention one thing. Have you ever heard of this Netflix documentary series? It's 3 episodes called American Nightmare.
No.
Okay. So I hadn't heard. Well, I'm sorry. I had heard about this because my husband made me watch it last year, but I didn't know what it was at the time. But this is a true crime television series, and it covers the March 15th potential or not kidnapping of Denise Huskins from the home she shared with her boyfriend, Aaron Quinn. And it's basically the whole plot is, she's a real life Gone Girl.
Okay. Do we know if she was influenced by the text, or is it just kind of that's an easy way to market this?
I'm trying to be really cagey, but because it's a thing where it's almost as twisty as Gone Girl itself, but it plays out in real life in real time. So I would highly recommend this, but obviously because the case was a big deal, I wouldn't read about it because then a lot of the surprises will be spoiled for you.
Gotcha. Okay, so if folks like Gone Girl and they're looking for something with a little bit more realism, they could check that out.
Yes, on Netflix, it's called American Nightmare, and I think it actually is the real life Gone Girl or something.
Interesting. Yes, use promo code HorrorQuit. No, I'm kidding. We don't have a deal with Netflix.
We don't have a deal with Netflix. Okay, Joe, what happens in this 2.5-hour movie? The new psychological thriller Apartment 7A is now streaming on Paramount+. Julia Garner stars as a struggling young dancer who suffers a devastating injury. Soon, she finds herself drawn in by dark forces when a peculiar, well-connected older couple promises her a shot at fame. Diane Wiest, Kevin McNally, and Jim Sturgis also star in the Paramount Plus original movie. Buy Apartment 7A on digital or stream it now on Paramount Plus. Rated R. Head to ParamountPlus.com/Apartment7A to try it free.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
This is an ad for BetterHelp. Welcome to the world. Please read your personal owner's manual thoroughly. In it, you'll find simple instructions for how to interact with your fellow human beings and how to find happiness and peace of mind. Thank you, and have a nice life.
Unfortunately, life doesn't come with an owner's manual. That's why there's BetterHelp Online Therapy. Connect with a credentialed therapist by phone, video, or online chat. Visit BetterHelp.com to learn more. That's BetterHelp.com.
Oh, Jesus. Everybody strap in.
Strap in.
Here we go. All right, we opened with the voice of Nick Dunn, who was played by Ben Affleck. I'm not going to lie, I know Rosamund Pike gets all of the accolades for this film, but I really like Ben Affleck's performance.
Oh, I do too. But it's the thing, it's the less showy role. Like, he doesn't get to have like the big moments like Pike does. But I think as I get older, I'm starting to really appreciate those understated performances, you know, because it's like, I don't know, when you're working on a movie, like, he has to know, like, you know, she's going to be the star of this movie, but...
Well, I also think that this film is lampooning him as an actor. Like, this feels like one of those, I cast you because you have a public persona that people could believe you as this doofus who would smile at the wrong time.
Yeah, but also, like, his relationship with tabloids.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that is true, because everything about this movie is really about how the media sensationalizes things.
Oh, yeah. Fincher calls the media tragedy vampires.
Oh, God damn it. That could be the name of my fucking new podcast.
If only you watched the Gone Girl commentary.
Clearly, what have I missed out on? All right. So, yes, Nick Dunn is pondering the state of his marriage to his wife, Amy, Rosamund Pike. And this is before we get our first date scroll. So we learned that this is July 5th, the morning of...
It's also like, I mean, I think the book opens this way too, but it's pretty brazen to open your movie with a line of dialogue with a man talking about how he wants to crack his wife's lovely skull and unspool her brains.
Yes. Well, once again, that old adage of like, what are men afraid of versus what are women afraid of?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So the morning of, Nick arrives at the bar, capital T, capital B, and this is the meta-named bar that he owns with his twin sister, Go, who is played by Carrie fucking Coon.
In her breakout role, by the way. Like, this is what put her on the map. And I remember, because I really liked the Mario character in the book. And
Go is great.
Yes, but here's the thing. This is a cast filled with recognizable names, except for her. And I remember being disappointed because I was like, oh, I wish I had someone I knew in that role, because I love that role. But she steals almost every single scene she's in.
Well, I think Go is such an audience surrogate kind of character where, especially when we realize it's okay to hate Amy, because she isn't I'm using all kinds of scare quotes here, likable character or a likable woman, Go embodies that. I think she gives us permission to dislike some of the negative qualities of Amy. And it's interesting because, of course, that's coming from the perspective of a woman. So, it's a little bit of female on female violence.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about misogyny in this movie.
No.
But it's so funny because, I mean, the reads of this film, some people think it's feminist and some people think it's misogynist. Some people think it's misandrist. And even Flynn has a quote where she's like, I remember reading that people thought it was misogynist. And I was like, that wasn't like what I meant. Did I just kill feminism? Like, what? Like, that wasn't what I meant.
Yeah, I won't lie. This was an interesting film to revisit so soon after the discussion that we had on Patreon about Strange Darling.
Yes. Everyone, go listen to that one because there's some juicy shit in there.
Yeah, and honestly, unexpected reactions from some of our patrons who I think didn't anticipate we were going to be tackling that, or at least tackling it in that way. But I think that discussions about whether or not women can quote unquote be believed if they do terrible things, how does that change the conversation? Does it give men permission to point at a text and say, oh, well, Amy fucking Dunn is the reason why if a woman says she was raped, I'm going to question that.
Which I'm just going to say, go back to that Netflix documentary, American Nightmare, because it's playing in that same fucking sandbox on your expectations as well.
Oh boy.
But it's also like, the feminist argument can be, we're writing a woman who can be just as bad as a man, who can be just as manipulative as a man. And so I see both sides of it. But ultimately, I don't find this misogynistic, but I don't really know if me as a man, I have the right to say, like, that's not misogynistic.
Well, I think if you can defend your position, then your position can be at least partially perceived to be correct. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely understand why people would be concerned about a character like this because of her actions. But I ultimately do side with Flynn's description of the character. And I'm going to end the episode with a quote from her that I think sums up at least my perspective on Amy Dunn. All right. Okay, so yes, cracking open dear wife's skull, moving to the bar on the day of, and then it's an awkward introduction to Nick because, we've heard this horrific voiceover where he talks about wanting to kill her, and then he goes and has a drink with his twin, and it's very much like, ugh, this fucking 5th anniversary, get me a drink, it's not even 11, and you're thinking, who is this guy?
Yeah, but it's his anniversary, and he's not happy about it.
He's not happy about it. But then we do start to get a sense of how the film, much like the book, is constructed, where we will alternate between the present tense as well as the picture-perfect diary entries from Amy. So we fade into her writing a diary entry, and it's all about their very verbose meet cute at first a party, then in the elevator, and then in a New York City sugar storm alley.
Which feels like it could only exist in a movie, right? Like,
oh my God, this is rom-com to the max.
And that feels very intentional. But
yeah.
I love that they keep all. I don't know how you do an adaptation of this book without keeping the journal entries, but I was so scared because it's very much a literary thing. Whereas, like, how is that going to translate to film? And I think both Flynn and Fincher do a really good job adapting this part of the novel.
Well, yeah, because I remember thinking when I read it, I was like, oh, are they really going to bounce around back and forth this much? Because it feels like that could be jarring, or, you know, one of the things I really like about the book is how at one point you side entirely with Nick because you're getting his voiceover. You're in his head. And then we flip it and suddenly you're getting Amy, and it's really easy to understand her perspective. And then, of course, you hit the twist and you have to reevaluate everything you thought you knew about both characters.
Well, it's also a thing, too, because, you know, we've heard the term unreliable narrator, but I think it's a thing where when you're reading it, or maybe even when you're watching this movie, you think, okay, one of them is lying. Yeah. You don't expect both of them to be lying.
Yeah. And in some ways, this is, you know, looking back on things with rose-colored glasses or wanting things to be better. But I mean, so much about this film and the book and real-life marriages are a certain sense of performativity, right? Like, we are constantly trying to be the person, right? I'm trying to be the cool girl in my relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. So, So we get this meet cute. Everything seems perfect. It's like, oh, wow, they're such a great couple. How did Nick get to the point where he's lamenting his 5th anniversary and drinking at the bar? So we do cut back to it. They're playing the game of life. And Nick literally says, I don't remember the point. And you're just like, okay.
On the nose.
A little on the nose, but it works. And he is lamenting that he is exhausted by the annual treasure hunt that his wife makes him go on every anniversary. And then, of course, he gets a phone call. So he comes home, the cat is out on the stoop, the front door is open, Amy is nowhere to be found, and there is signs of a struggle.
Now, really quick, I want to rewind 1 second. So to this meet cute thing, because we do get to see them having sex for a little bit, but it's not quote unquote normal movie sex because they're not actually fucking. He is eating her out.
Yes, he is. And I remember, like, this probably doesn't hit the same way nowadays because I feel like we've seen Outlander, we've seen any number of movies where it's very much focused on female oral pleasure. Back in 2014, this was highly unusual. It was like, oh shit, we're acknowledging that women can get eaten out? Oh.
And the reason they did this, so it was originally supposed to be a sex scene. And they said they practiced like a bunch of times, like to do different stuff. And then they realized this scene was kind of meant to be a way to have the audience like Nick. And so Fincher was like, he called Rosamund Pike and was like, what if he's performing cunnilingus on you? Right. And Pike responds, oh yeah, every woman in the audience will love him after that.
True. I mean, that's why he plays as revelatory, because you think, well, A, we never get to see that, but also B, isn't that the thing we never acknowledge women enjoy?
Yeah, exactly. So we have this man who may or may not be a murderer, but he eats his wife out. Good for him.
There we go. Yeah, I'm totally on his side now. Okay, so back in the present, he sees this, I mean, it looks like a crime scene or some kind of horrific abduction. So he calls the cops and enter Detective Rhonda Boney, who is played by Kim Dickens, who is just so good. I mean, we're just going to keep saying it pretty much every time we introduce an actor, but like Kim Dickens is so good in this movie.
It's so funny. You know, the first time I ever saw Kim Dickens was in Hollow Man. She got that red pixie haircut.
Oh yeah, bad role. Good actor.
Well, yeah, exactly. But she's like one of the best. Like she's one of the best characters in the movie because she's like the only one that says what is right.
Right. And folks, we have an audio commentary on that, and her death scene is incredibly upsetting.
Oh, it's so sad. She should not have died. But spoiler alert, by the way. But no, and that is another thing too. Like, Fincher is so complimentary to his actors. After the fact, I guess. But but no, he talks about how he uses the term specifically about her that you used about Pike. She's a chameleon, and he loves that when you look at her, you can just constantly see her thinking. You can see the cogs turning in her head. And he says that she's a very energetic actor and that she kept wanting to do bigger things in the role. And he was like, no. You are the person holding all this together. You are quiet. You are pensive. You are analyzing everything.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I definitely feel like in the book, it feels like Boney is the one who waffles back and forth on Nick, but to the point where when she actually believes he may be responsible for Amy's murder, she gets disappointed in him.
Yeah, no, I think it's disappointed in him, but I think it's also maybe disappointment in herself for for trusting him. For trusting him, absolutely. But I like that this cop isn't a caricature. Like, I really genuinely like this character, outside of the fact that Kim Dickens is doing a fantastic job here.
Yeah, and then getting slightly less to do is her partner, Officer James Gilpin, who is played by Patrick Fugit. But I do think he's doing good work with what little he gets.
That's kind of the thing. I definitely wanted him to have more to do. But that's a lot of the big names in this movie. They kind of pop up. Celia Ward pops up for a scene and leaves.
My God. I totally forgot she was in this, and I was like, "Girl!" Oh, she's gone. Okay, never mind.
We'll have plenty to say about Missi Pyle.
Oh my God!
But yeah, Gilpin. He's just kind of. He'll say things after Boney sometimes, or he'll make snide remarks because he doesn't trust Nick. So Fugit's doing okay, but it's just it's not much of a role because Boney's kind of the head honcho.
Yeah, I think he's there in some of the same ways that Go is meant to make it allowable to dislike Amy. I think this is men can also mistrust men.
Oh, you know what? I like that.
Okay. So, Nick begins to show them around the house, and we get a bunch of exposition about how long they've been in Missouri, which is 2 years. They moved there because his mom got sick. And then there's a brief stopover in the kitchen where we note that there's some blood splatter.
Didn't you love all this Post-it note stuff that Boney's doing?
God. Yeah, it's fun.
Because it's so weird, because at this point, you don't really know, if they trust Nick or not, but Boney just, she'll clock something. Oh, Post-it note goes on it. That's a clue.
Yeah, exactly. And we are very much in Nick's perspective, where we are seeing things for the first time. We're confused. We don't know whether we can trust these police officers or what they're thinking about him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we also learned that Amy is the inspiration for a popular children's book series, which you have already alluded to, Trace, the Amazing Fucking Amy series.
She looks like a little bitch in these books too.
Oh my God. I do love when we get to see the real Amy, when the veil drops and we get to get a better understanding of how she actually thinks about everybody and how much she hates this character.
But honestly, okay, here's the thing though. And everyone, Amy is a psychopath.
Sure.
But I totally understand her reaction to these books. And we get it in this flashback, with this press event. And she's like, because Nick tells her, your parents plagiarized your childhood. And she's like, no, they improved upon it. Because whenever real life Amy failed at something, book Amy succeeded at that exact same thing.
Yeah, and I cannot imagine how much that would fuck you up as a child, right? It's not just that your parents privately say, oh, we would have liked you to have done better. We expected this of you. It's every time you fail at something, you get to see your better liked, more successful alter ego that goes out into the world as this beloved icon for children everywhere. It's like, oh, well, she did it better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
fuck off.
And granted, at this point, we're still meant to empathize with Amy, unless you've read the book. So I absolutely empathize with her in these moments.
Yeah. Okay, yes. So we are at the book launch where Amazing Amy gets engaged, and we're introduced to Amy's parents. So we have Mary Beth, who is played by Lisa Baines, as well as her father, Rand, who is played by David Clennon. And there's this really uncomfortable moment where Amy has to do press against her will, and of course, all of these reporters are like, oh, well, you're not married. How does this make you feel? And this is interesting because Nick sort of swoops in and quote unquote saves her. So they've been dating for a while at this point, and he ends up proposing to her by saying like, oh, well, now you're engaged, just like Amy. But it's also a bit of a like bullshitty white knight kind of move.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need you to save me, motherfucker.
Well, he does say that she has a world-class vagina in front of all of these members of the press.
Gross.
At this children's book opening.
Yeah. I mean, this is very clearly for adults. There are no children present, but it's just like, no, man, that's gauche. Don't do that.
Maybe it's because I'm so far out of the world of like children's literature, but like, are new children's books like this big of a deal?
I imagine they might be when it's this popular or this long running a series. But right. I mean, yeah, like I've been invited to some book parties, but it's usually more like, oh, Scholastic is hosting a holiday party and we want to, you know, introduce you to 12 different authors who have a book coming out.
It's not like the book party for this like 15-page children's book.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also New York, so maybe it's just an excuse to dress up and drink.
You know what? That's probably it.
Everybody loves a party.
Well, and her parents seem like socialites, so they probably have all the PR people.
I mean, let's not forget, these books have made them mega coins. They are rich, or they should be.
Well, but they're also not immune to the recession.
Well, there is that, yes. Yeah. Okay. So we jump back to the present, and Nick is being questioned at the police station, and we learn that we've scheduled a press conference. So, you know, in missing person cases, it's very important to try to find them within the first 24 hours if you want to find them alive. So this all makes sense, and they're questioning him. We're kind of discovering that there's things he doesn't seem to know about Amy, and some of them are presented as like, oh, you don't know this, and then other things are like, you don't know your wife's blood type. And then, of course, when Nick goes out to call her parents, Boney tells Gilpin, oh, yeah, no, you don't need to know your wife's blood type. That's not something that's expected of most people.
Literally, because I was like, I don't think I do. I don't even know if I know my blood type.
I don't know my blood type. No.
But again, like Fugit is doing he's being pretty condescending every time he speaks, but
yeah.
Dickens is doing a really good job of saying really condescending questions, but not in a fully condescending way.
Yeah. I mean, there is an element of good cop, bad cop to the proceedings, but you do get the impression it's less of a performance. Like that kind of is their real life dynamic.
Well, because also like she's very much the one in charge because she'll tell him several times, like, stop it.
Well, she's a detective and he's an officer.
Right. He's the local guy.
Yeah. So, so we're also getting some other exposition. And of course, if you've read the book, I think some of these things are bigger red flags or signifiers. Some of this doesn't ultimately really pay off that well in the film. And it's by virtue of having to condense a lot of plot into, still a 2.5 hour movie, but we had to excise some shit.
Well, it's also, I mean, like, you know, it's a mystery. Like, we have to have some, like, red herrings or clues that don't mean anything. But I will say, I don't envy you having to do this plot summary because...
it took a lot of culling.
Well, here's the thing. Because even though, yes, it's a long movie, it's 2.5 hours, but it's very densely plotted. And to go through, like, every little bit, it would take 5 hours. It would take twice the time.
Yeah. And frankly would not be super interesting. Like, I was like, well, how much should I talk about Nick's dad? How much should I talk about the mall? It's like, these are all important things, but we're painting a picture of a town in recession, a marriage that's in trouble where people aren't being perfectly honest, and they have real lives. Like, Nick's situation sucks, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
He exacerbates it by being a shit, but, you know, the circumstances that required them to move from New York back to Missouri is like, well, his mom got sick and his dad has Alzheimer's and his sister was like, please help.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Okay, but we do learn that the town is undergoing the same recession, so the mall has recently shuttered, and Amy had difficulty adjusting, so she didn't seem to have a lot of friends, and she turned to reading. In the book, it's very clear that she has been reading a lot of true crime, and in the movie, we just say, she's a voracious reader.
Yeah, I mean, we'll show her reading true crime when the twist happens, but not this early in the film.
No, yeah, we're keeping the cards close to the chest. chest.
But I will say though, if you're just like that would be normal, especially in 2014, because I feel like, I mean, when did true crime podcasts really start taking off?
It's whenever My Favorite Murder started, so I would say about 2016, 2017.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we are introduced to Nick's father because he has been brought into the station. He's played by Leonard Kelly Young. He has Alzheimer's, so he has wandered away from the assisted living facility that he's at. And I say this only because we see Nick drive him back, and this is where we start to see that Nick has a disposable cell phone with a full mailbox, and we're not entirely sure why.
Yeah, and he will keep trying to, like, text very sneakily, but it's like... the film doesn't make it a point to be like, look, he's being sneaky. It's like, if you pay attention, you'll see it, but the film doesn't do a lot to call it out.
Yeah, he's always doing other things that seem to be more important. It's like, who keeps trying to call him? Who is he trying to reach? And you sort of put that in your back pocket and anticipate it'll pay off later.
Which it does.
Yeah. Okay, so we hop back to the second anniversary treasure hunt, and again, this is the relationship in full bloom. Everything is picture perfect. We're fucking at the bookstore. We're getting each other the same sheets. It's like, oh, we're so in sync. Everything's great. But back in the present, Nick is now staying at Go's place because his house is a crime scene and he's not allowed in there. He is drinking, again with the burner phone, so something's not adding up. He doesn't seem to be entirely honest with his sister. And then when we cut back to his place, we see that Boney is being approached by Amy's pregnant best friend, Noelle, who is played by Happy Endings Casey Wilson.
This is my one of two what the fuck castings in this movie. This is the year after Happy Endings got canceled, so she's like fresh off that sitcom. But
okay,
I will say, like, David Fincher is like I think he praises her the most out of everyone in this commentary. Like, he loves her. Thinks she's one of the funniest women on the planet. Which, I mean, she is. Very funny.
She is. She's so fucking funny. It's one of those things where it's like, why are all the people who worked on Happy Endings not everywhere all the time?
Oh my god,
they're so talented.
I think the Wayans brother is the only one that's really like doing something like regular in acting. But
and Adam Pally, who I don't mind, but like of everyone, I would have given Eliza Coupe the like, you deserve a gold star.
I fully agree.
I mean, of course you do.
Yeah, like, no, she's the Monica. Y'all watch Happy Endings. It's fucking 3 seasons. It's so good. But
yeah.
But you know, Coupe at least got Future Man.
Right. Yeah, which is underappreciated, and people should definitely check it out because it's so fucking weird and funny.
Well, you know what, though? They can't check it out, at least not for free, because even though it was a Hulu original show, yeah, so there was like budget cuts at Hulu or something, and so they got rid of a lot of their original programming. So you can watch Future Man, but you have to pay to rent it or buy it.
Okay. This is the day and age we live in, I guess.
But y'all, like, just Future Man, so like there was a James Cameron episode of that show that is one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah. Anyway, we have taken a slight tangent down the garden path. We're talking about Casey Wilson, who is the one in this movie. But yeah, she is Amy's pregnant best friend. Very dumb, very shrill, very demanding.
That accent, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's Missouri, so.
Nick, what did you do with your pregnant wife, Nick?
But again, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's just a random, it's not even a huge role. She has like 3 scenes, I think. Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, yeah, I think Fincher says, hey, but she's good for the part. I'm not going to cast someone that's not good for the part.
Well, I mean, yeah, that seems reasonable.
That seems normal.
Yeah, so here's a best friend that Nick didn't know about, and also we learned that everything is in Amy's name, so she was paying all of the bills, including footing the purchase of the bar, capital T, capital B, and then we also get our first clue. This is a nice moment of comedy in a film that is not always incredibly funny, but I do love where she's like, we've got our first clue, and holds up this envelope that says, Clue 1.
So yes, I would never call this a comedy, but I do think, and maybe it's Flynn's writing, but there's a darkly comedic streak throughout the film. Again, wouldn't call it a comedy, but there's a lot of comedy here, I still think.
Yeah, and some of it is in the dialogue and the performances, like the line I quoted off the top where Go is talking about, oh, what do you give your wife for the wood anniversary?
Slap her with your penis and say, there's some wood for you, bitch.
It doesn't hurt that it's being delivered by Carrie Coon, and she's so fucking good in Acerbic, but there is funny moments in this film, but I think it gets overshadowed by the darkness and the twistiness of the characters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we move on to July 6th. So this is one day gone. And Go is warning Nick not to bottle up at the press conference. So that is today's agenda. He has to go. He has to make a statement. Amy's parents are coming in and they're going to be there as well. But he doesn't handle these kinds of situations well. And Go knows this. So she's trying to psych him up, but it doesn't quite work. He speaks first. It's pretty quiet. It's a little dispassionate. And then we get Amy's parents and, they're doing exactly what you would want. It's very much the grieving parents saying Amy's name a lot. Please bring her back. We love her so much. And you're like, ooh, Nick doesn't come off looking super great in this moment.
Well, because he doesn't seem to care that much.
Yeah. And then, of course, it all ends with the infamous, I would say that this is probably one of the screenshots that got shared the most when the film came out.
Oh, yeah.
It's the picture of Nick smiling next to his missing wife's poster.
Oh, yeah. This is like a big turning point in the book, too, where it's like, oh, you just don't get it, do you?
You don't care.
Here's the thing, though. I don't want to say I relate to Nick a lot, but I kind of get it. Like, I'm a person who, like, my life is very organized. And when things don't, like, fit into that organization schedule that I have for myself, I tend to panic a little bit or whatever. I don't always react the quote-unquote normal way.
Right.
And so, it's like, what are you supposed to do? Not smile, obviously, but...
Well, and the more that I learn about true crime, the more that it becomes clear there is an expectation, there is a performativity about how people are expected to behave in certain situations. And it doesn't help that so often when a woman is abducted or if she is murdered, it often is the husband or boyfriend. Yes. So it does make sense that people suspect him. But at the same time, there isn't a right or a wrong way because everybody grieves, processes anger. Like basically anything to do with emotions, you're going to get wide disparities of how people react or present. And when people don't conform to the way you expect them to behave, which is really the whole thematic underline of this movie, right? It's like there isn't a right or a wrong way because people are fucking complicated and we hide parts of ourselves. Sorry, that was a lot.
No. I'm processing, but I get it. I totally agree with you.
Basically, the way Nick reacts is not the way we would expect him to, but it's actually not that uncommon. It's like laughing at a horror film.
A little bit, yeah.
But, you would argue that in Nick's situation, he should be reading the room, and he doesn't seem fully capable of that.
No, not at all. But here, it's the thing, like, because we'll learn later, like, Amy knows this smile. Like, she knows he will smile.
It's going to come out.
But that's the thing is, it's like, I guess it's like a reflex almost. You're standing, you're posing, you're having your picture taken, and it's like, it's just instinct. Just smile. Crack a smile.
Exactly. Yeah, especially when you're having your photo taken. What do you normally get told to do?
Yeah, just make sure you look at what's next to you and that it's not a missing poster of your wife.
Yeah, it's so true. Okay. So we're back to being questioned by the police. So this is Amy's parents under the kind of hot mic. And Mary Beth mentions that there are a couple of people we should consider. So yeah, maybe we're looking at Nick, but there's other people. So Amy has a troubled past with a couple of folks, including a rapist named Tommy O'Hara, as well as a suicidal college boyfriend named Desi Collins. More on both of those later.
Well, Desi is at this volunteer headquarters.
He is, yes. It's a bit of a blink and you miss it. I think if it wasn't Neil Patrick Harris, if it was just some other character actor, you probably wouldn't even really take note. But
this isn't what the fuck casting for me, but I do think I don't think it's stunt casting, but it's like,
it's almost off-brand casting. Like not the person you would expect, but actually doing a good job.
I think it's like, oh, what if his character from How I Met Your Mother was a psychopath?
Okay. I can actually definitely see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something by stunt casting, where it's like, okay, like him playing that, like the straight womanizer in How I Met Your Mother was like, going against his public image. So it's like, oh, let's hammer that home a little bit more.
Well, as we said, right, we're leaning into who the actor's public persona is and then either playing off of it or saying like, yeah, okay, we knew you would expect this and that's why it works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, but we do have to follow up on these clues. So, of course, we have the first one, which leads us to Nick's college office. This is where we find clue number 2, but also a pair of red lace panties. And there's a moment of kind of fumbling acknowledgement. I'm not sure if those are Amy's. I don't know who those are. Yeah, no, those are definitely Amy's. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Also, this clue, like, did you get it like a double entendre here? Like, although this spot couldn't be any tighter, like, okay, come on. Like,
oh, yeah. I mean, but the whole point is that here's a woman who's desperately still in love with her husband, and we're talking about getting down, right?
Yes.
In the book, it's very much like we would always order in lobster from New York, and then we would always end the treasure hunt with a big old fuckfest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, that actually sounds like a pretty good anniversary to me, but
I
sure.
I mean, look, I just can't imagine doing this whole charade like every fucking year for the rest of my life.
I think it's more the prove your love to me aspect that I don't enjoy. Like, I love a treasure hunt. I think that would be super fun, but not in I'm trying to stump you to see how closely you've been paying attention to me.
Sorry, I was totally thinking about the Amy side of it. I was like, I can't even think about like having to come up with the clues.
The practical part. I
would love to be the treasure hunter. But yes, no, because we found out earlier, like she got really pissed at him one year when he couldn't get one of the clues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for now, everything still seems great. So. We've got these panties. He lies about understanding the clue. So he very clearly knows where to go for the third clue, but he doesn't say that to Boney or Gilpin. But he does lead them straight back to his dad's house. He just happens to get there first. But interestingly enough, it seems like the passcode for the alarm doesn't work anymore. So he does set it off before they come in.
It's really sad trying to watch him try to figure this whole thing out because he actually has to call the people and he doesn't even know the answer to the security question.
No, he does not. But of course, we will learn it's because Amy knew he would do all of these things and is deliberately trying to either provoke him or fuck around with him at every step.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we flash back and we learn that Amy and Nick both lose their jobs in the recession. So this is very similar to Flynn's real life experience. And then Amy's debt-ridden parents. So they were so well off. They've got this fantastic book series. She's got her trust fund and they gobble it all up because of either some bad investments or they just haven't been careful with the money during the recession. And so it's all gone. And then we end this scene with the dreaded phone call, which of course we now know will be the call that brings them back to Missouri. So the glamorous perfect marriage is starting to fray at the edges.
But this is all very relatable, and we get so many shots of them just like, I mean, I felt very seen when she walks in and he's just playing Call of Duty with Chinese boxes all over the coffee table.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tough, right? What are the two things that end up causing a lot of conflict or friction in a relationship? It's either sex or money. And in this case, it definitely seems like, well, the money is a big issue. And as a result, the sex is kind of non-existent.
Yeah.
So, back in the present, we head to the volunteer headquarters. Yes, this is where we will briefly see Desi. But we don't really make a big deal out of him, except that Nick clocks him because it seems a little odd that someone that well dressed, that man by himself, because it's a lot of women who are here. So we do make note of him, but we don't move on it right now. And that's mostly because everyone is paying very close attention to Nick. So they are scrutinizing his every move. And it's partially because he keeps interacting with women in not great ways. So we have interactions like the one with him and Shauna Kelly. And she is played by Kathleen Rose Perkins. So she wants to bake him something to make sure that he's eating properly. And then she has to take a picture and he is suddenly like, oh, fuck, this doesn't look good. And he asks her to try to delete it and she refuses. And then it becomes like this friction point where this woman now has a story to tell about him.
Oh, believe me, she will. This is also, because this is the like, can I speak to your manager haircut? Like, this is the Karen haircut on this woman.
Yeah. This is Karen before Karen was a thing.
But
Missouri
like,
Karen.
The way she, because it's interesting because he takes the photo thinking, oh, it's harmless enough. But like, you see him realize, wait.
Yeah.
No.
No.
And she gets like on a dime, becomes a total bitch about it.
Yes. Yeah. And in the book, you get a bit more insight into, you know, like, oh God, this woman won't leave me alone. Like, this is actually a recurring pattern of behavior where she is trying to flirt with him. Other women are finding him very sexy and desirable because he is a kind of tragic male with the lost wife and he's so vulnerable. And then it kind of comes to a head with this sort of interaction. But then, yeah, all of a sudden it's, okay, 1 minute you kind of wanted to fuck me and now you think I'm the biggest piece of shit and you're running to the media.
Yeah.
Women and men. Complicated characters. Okay, so keeping that in mind, we jump back to the past, and this is Amy and Nick setting up shop in Missouri, and immediately she just doesn't fit in. So she even refers to herself as disposable. We see her on the margins of Nick and his mom and Go, and it just feels like she doesn't have a place in this move. So
I think the thing I'm most fascinated by with this journal is that she wrote all of this in the past year.
Yes.
So that, like, even getting the dates right and all this stuff, I'm just like, what? But hey, this is when. So do you think she actually felt this way when they moved in, or do you think this is her starting to like change the tide of like how she feels about Nick for the police's sake?
I do believe up to a certain point. So I think we're kind of coming to the end of the real feelings, but I do think that this kind of stuff is probably a little legitimate. She's still painting it in a particular lens because she obviously wants to lead up to accusations of domestic assault and that kind of stuff. She really obviously wants to paint Nick in a bad light, but I think the stuff about her finding the transition rocky and being unmoored, I think that all rings true.
Yeah. Okay.
So back in the present, this is where we get the reveal of the burner phone. So Nick is at Go's place, and all of a sudden we get a message that says, I'm outside. And lo and behold, this is his very young, very flighty, and very horny mistress, Andy, who is played by Emily Ratajkowski.
Yes. And important to note, y'all, at this point, she was known as the Blurred Lines girl.
The Robin Thicke?
Yeah, yo, she's the girl that's topless in his music video.
Okay, I thought she looked familiar, but it's also just kind of like straight from Hot Girl Central Casting.
Yeah, so this girl, she's very fascinating. And again, on the commentary, like Fincher talks about, like, he didn't seek her out. Someone suggested her to him, and he was like, the Blurred Lines girl, really? Like, he thought she was going to be like a vapid model, basically. Right. And he was like, she's actually like very smart. She's willing to try anything. She's willing to look stupid for the camera. She is, she has wonderful things to say about her. And I will say, if you remember when we discussed the House of Wax, the remake with Paris Hilton, I talked about another Netflix documentary, actually.
Oh, look at you on your Netflix documentary game.
But no, it's called An American Meme, and it takes a look at 4 like social media influencers and like how like the darker side of what they do, and how it affects them. And Paris Hilton is one of them. One of the other ones is this woman, Emily Ratajkowski.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so it's a thing where I think when you look at her, again, if you only know her as that girl that was walking around topless in Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines video, you're like, oh, like, which, bad, don't think that.
Right. Well, and isn't that telling about how we perceive women in certain types of roles, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, she's actually like a really successful entrepreneur now. Like, she does a lot of, like, she doesn't do like quote unquote just modeling, you know?
Okay, cool. Good for her. Yeah, I mean, I like Andy in this film, as I think the other pervasive comment we're going to make about all of these people is that there just isn't quite enough of them. There's so many people in this cast. They're all really, really good. But, you know, Andy gets, again, maybe 2 or 3 big scenes?
I mean, I think this is her biggest scene. And then, you know, she's there at the vigil, and then she'll do the interview later, and that's about it.
Yeah. But I mean, she's good when we see her.
Yeah. Nevertheless, Nick is stupid.
Oh,
like,
my God.
I can excuse and like make excuses for like most of the things he's done thus far, but And it's not even he lied about having an affair, which admittedly is pretty stupid.
Yes.
But it's let her into your sister's house so you can fuck her on the couch.
I mean, the fact that he doesn't get caught at this moment, like obviously Go will see Nick telling her to get out in the morning and then it kind of comes to a head. But like, I would be expecting if I was a person under suspicion, and maybe it's just that he doesn't because he is such a doofus, but I would presume that people are watching my house or watching what I'm doing, watching how I'm reacting. Like we saw it at the volunteer headquarters where all eyes were on him.
I guess at this point he thinks, it's my sister's house. No one's here. They're all at my house. But still, dude, like don't take that risk.
Do not assume. It is not worth it. But I mean, this girl is also stage 5 clinger. Like she will not be set up. Like it's very much, I'm not going to be ignored, Nick. She's got some big Glenn Close energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we hop back to 2011 and Amy is outlining the aftermath of Mama Marine's death. So we move back to Missouri to look after Nick's mom, and then she pretty much immediately dies. So, But this is when Nick is almost reverting back to being a child, right? So this is really when he is using her for sex. He buys the bar. He's sitting around playing Call of Duty, eating takeout and all this kind of stuff.
He's suggesting they go to Outback Steakhouse for date night, which I just loved.
It is a very specific reference. I would be curious to know if our non-North American listeners even get something like that, or if they just kind of read the context clues.
Yeah, and I will say it wasn't Outback originally. They actually picked Outback because the crew was staying in a Drury Inn in Missouri, and they would always go into the Outback next door. And so Fincher said, say it's Outback.
Wow. And to think that Ruby Tuesdays was right there.
I don't think Ruby Tuesdays has the same footprint as Outback Steakhouse in American cuisine.
No, this is true, but I do love hearing Southern people say, Ruby Tuesdays.
Ruby Tuesdays.
So one of the big changes that we start to note is that Nick is acting kind of petulant. He's giving her the silent treatment. He's not including her in plans. And Amy is resentful about being forced into the role of shrill, naggy, bitchy wife. Like, this is a shift that we have seen in countless other films, right? But I won't lie. I'm like, oh, fuck, I've been the Amy. I think I am the Amy.
Oh, yeah.
And it sucks when you feel like I can't control it, but I need to be like, can you take me with you? What time are you coming home? Who have you been with?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely been that person before. I think most people have been that person at one point in their life. No, maybe it was when they were teenagers and not adults, but everyone's been that person.
It's all adults. No. It's so relatable to me. And this is really, I think at this point we are supposed to start gently turning on Nick because we're still getting a picture perfect example of, well, this is the wife who's trying. She really, agreed to do all of these hard things for Nick. And look at him being so unappreciative.
Yeah. But okay, because she brings up having this kid again. But this is when we're lying now, right?
Yes. The kid stuff is an interesting subplot in this film, right? Because I think this is where they're both really lying, or that it's the hardest to decipher the truth. Because in the past, according to Amy, she brings up having a kid and then he freaks out on her because the timing is all wrong. And then this leads to the first on-screen depiction of domestic abuse.
Yeah, so he pushes her down on the floor. But so here's the thing. I think the push is true. I think the argument was different because Nick will say later that she never wanted to have a kid. He did. She did not. So I think this is a case where she was being particularly nasty about the kid and he pushed her. I'm not saying it's justified at all.
No.
I'm just saying that the situation is not how Amy is presenting it.
Okay. Yeah, it is interesting because I love that sort of later reveal that contradicts this where, he says, no, I'm the one who wanted it and she didn't do the follow through. But I think just from a structural point of view, this is Flynn being so careful about laying out the seeds that will really pay off, because the whole end of the book and the film will germinate from this particular plot point, and I feel like it is so fucking effective.
It really is. But I mean, like, well, the ending is so controversial.
Interesting, because I think it's like pitch perfect.
This is interesting. Yeah, no, some people hate, like, Gillian Flynn is on record as saying, like, I have so many people that come up to me and they say how much they love the book, but then they
until the end,
and then they end the conversation with, "But why did you do that ending?"
Oh my god, because the ending. Okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Okay, so we hop back to the present, and this is where Boney and Gilpin are going to the mall. So they're doing their due diligence, investigating different things. So they're questioning the unhoused people who live in this mall. Great, sort of like a depth of cinematography. Like, this mall is very shady looking. Mm-hmm. And this man, Jason, talks about how Amy came to him, but not because she was involved in drugs or crime or something like that. It's because she wanted a gun for Valentine's Day because she did not trust her husband. And then we get a bunch of very carefully edited, almost scattershot images of Amy as she worries that she's being paranoid and she fears that her husband is going to hurt her.
That's not going to do well for Nick.
No, it sure will not. So we move to June 8th. This is now 3 days gone. And so it's the morning after. So Andy has slept over. It's not just, oh, you let your mistress into the house. It's, oh my God, you fell asleep on the fucking couch, you idiot. And this is where Go sees her. So we have to have a conversation. How long has this been going on? How young is she? So we learn that this is a student of Nick's from the college and that he has been seeing Andy for more than a year. They've only been in Missouri for 2.
Margot's reaction. Oh, boo-hoo, I got laid off. I think I'll fuck a teenager.
Yeah, which is not quite right. He does make it very clear that she is of legal age.
Well, yeah, but you can still be 18 and be a teenager.
I think one of the reasons that I find Go so endearing in this film, as we said, I'm just going to keep saying Carrie Coon, Carrie Coon, yeah. Carrie Coon, mm-hmm. but also because she says things like, she says the line that we're all thinking like, what the fuck are you doing, Nick? Like, but then she'll also turn it around and say, I'm terrified for you. Like, she is still on his side, even though she recognizes he is a fucking idiot in this moment.
No, she will continue to think that for a long time.
But one of the reasons that she is so terrified is because the story is starting to get picked up by the mainstream media, including cable news. So let's introduce Ellen Abbott, played by Missi fucking Pyle.
So Fincher says this is not an intentional riff on Nancy Grace, even though he says,
come on.
He says Ellen Abbott was not meant to be a reflection of anyone or a mirror image of any real life person. But
okay.
I can see the Nancy Grace of it all, and I was like, okay,
okay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, she does look like any one of these kind of outraged. Mm-hmm. I've got my own show. It plays on CNN at 8 p.m. or something, or like a Fox News.
And this is one too where I was really happy to hear Fincher being like, "Oh, I love Missi Pyle." I'm like,
honestly,
yes.
It's a fucking deal breaker for me. Like, we're done if you say that you don't like Missi Pyle.
It's again, this is a character too. Like, I would love to have more. I don't know where you would organically inject her into more of this story, but I love watching her play this role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she is a quote unquote man hater. So she basically has this specialty program where she almost exclusively goes after men who have, abducted, injured, battered, killed their wives, and so she has Nick in the crosshairs. And this is also our first taste of Tanner Bolt, who is a patron saint of wife killers, played by Tyler Perry.
Joe, would you believe that this is my second of the What the Fuck castings?
Yes. So, glimpse behind the curtain, folks. We definitely had a conversation of like, oh, I forgot this person was in it. Oh, I forgot this person. And you get to Tyler Perry and you just think, it's perfection and also absolute what the fuck, because it's inspired casting, because I actually think he's legitimately very, very good in this role.
I do too.
He is the last person I would have thought to put into it, though.
Well, he is too, because apparently Fincher sought him out and called him and said, hey, I really want you to be this part in this movie. And Tyler Perry's response to him was, are you sure? Like, me? And apparently the reason was he thought he had this quality because in the book, the Tanner character is, I mean, he's still the same character, but he's a bit more of a slick, like suave kind of guy.
Right.
And he liked this disarming quality that Tyler Perry had. He also appreciated how he was on set. Like, so like whenever Tyler Perry wasn't filming, he was on set watching them film. Which maybe that's the filmmaker in him, but Fincher really respected that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just reread the book in anticipation of this, and I could be mistaken, but I got the impression that Tanner Bolt is coated white and that he has like this kind of Amazonian black wife, and that's like Bolt and Bolt. And I don't know. It's interesting because obviously he doesn't have a wife in the film. So this is one of the excisions that Flynn had to get rid of. You know, we're culling characters and subplots and so on. But it's a different kind of Tanner Bolt. He comes off almost a little smarmy and slick is the right word. I think that Tyler Perry is doing an interesting job of making this character quite likable and savvy. He's almost a voice of reason, and that's why he pairs very well with Go.
Yes, which I think also even this type of character, like I'm thinking of any of the like legal procedurals I've watched, you know, where it's like, oh yeah, you always have that one lawyer that's like the defender of like, you know, the murderers, and they can always come across as kind of like shady, and it's like, oh, this is a different avenue to take this archetype.
Yeah, like he doesn't read asshole. He reads more like, yeah, I'm going to take your money, but we're going to play this smart because I've seen how it works. And the system being the mainstream media and how to put a spin on it. Because at the end of the day, it's about the court of public opinion.
Well, but he also like seems to genuinely care about wanting to get Nick off. Like, I mean, yes, it's a paycheck for him, but it's not just a paycheck for him.
Yeah. Also, you just said getting Nick off, and now I'm thinking about Tyler Perry and Ben Affleck. I'm going to float this out there just because I did see internet speculation that Tyler Perry is apparently bisexual, but I could not find any confirmation of it. But if so, fuck yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. He actually, have you seen a lot of those Medea movies?
Oh, I've seen none of those Medea movies.
None of them. I've seen the first. I've seen like Bad Black Woman. I've seen Reunion. I've seen Medea Goes to Jail. And I had a friend that made me watch, I think, Medea's Big House or something. Big Happy Family. None of them are good.
I mean, they have an appeal to certain people. They are broad farcical comedies, right?
Yes, but I will say, like, no matter what you think of the Medea character, I do think Tyler Perry is a good actor. It's just that he's known for that character, and he contains multitudes, and I just think that people think he can just do the Medea thing. And so even though, again, like this Tanner Bolt role isn't like a showy role, but I think it's kind of a thing where it's like, oh, I didn't know he had this in him, this understated role in him.
Yeah, he's got levels to him. I mean, we should also acknowledge he's like a multi-hyphenate super producer, director. Like, he's got a ginormous studios. I did not care for his stance on AI, but yeah, it is what it is. So
yeah, well, I mean, at this point, if I was to nitpick every single like statement made by a celebrity, like I don't know if I would like any celebrity.
No, this is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, we have noted that Tanner Bolt might play an important role in the future, but for now, he's just being interviewed on the Ellen Abbott show. So, back at the precinct, we've got Boney and Gilpin, and they are bickering about whether or not they think Nick is involved in the crime, because, of course, we are treating this as a crime scene, so we think that something nefarious is going on, and that is partially because we just got the results of the luminol test, and holy shit, somebody cleaned up a bunch of blood in the kitchen, and not well.
And like, the cherry on top of it is, like, the hand mark sliding away. It's like, oh, girl.
Oh, no. Something very dark and bad happened here. I mean, it's very satisfying reading that passage in the book where Amy is like, yeah, and then you just bleed a bunch and you do a real shit job of cleaning it up, but this is surprisingly easy to fake an attack. Because she knows she doesn't have to do a good job of it because Nick is not, a professional. So he would make a big giant mess of it and he would do a half-assed job. All right, so let's do the vigil. We did the press conference. Let's do the vigil. Candlelight. Picture it. Everybody's very sad, but also Nick has an opportunity to redeem himself because he gets to make another address, another plea to bring Amy back. And it goes very well. Until Noelle shows up in the middle of it and starts screaming, Amy was 6 weeks pregnant, and what has he done to his pregnant wife?
No, come on, do the line with the accent.
What have you done with your wife, Nick? Nick, where's Amy? Where's Amy, Nick? It's terrible. I think it changes every time I
think it's better than mine, to be honest.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so Amy was apparently 6 weeks pregnant.
Yeah. And this is, of course, very much news to Nick, and everybody just jumps on it because, hello, the story just took another twist. I do love that he doesn't even try to cover. He is floored. And he essentially runs for it.
But not after Miss Andy mouths "you asshole" to him as he's professing his love to Amy.
Oh, shit. We have burned a bridge. That woman is a loose fucking cannon.
Well, I can't believe he doesn't think she's like, because Tanner's like, no, she's a time bomb. He's like, no, he's not saying anything. Yes, she is. Dude, also, the fact that it's one of your students. Like, if you're going to fuck a 20-year-old, like, go fuck someone in another county.
What, you don't think you could get any number of hot 20-somethings looking like
Ben Affleck
in 2014? Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the enjoyable things about the Nick character is even if we do occasionally like him or recognize him as a certain type of male archetype, he is just so dumb. Like, he is a dumb, hot guy who is entitled. And he does not think very far ahead. And part of this movie is the education where, if you want to exist, if you want to compete with the fucking Amy Dunns of the world, you need to step up your game.
Yeah, well, he didn't know what he was marrying into.
Clearly not. No.
I mean, I don't think anyone knows what they're getting into when they first meet Amy, as evidenced by the other men in her life.
Well, this is true. Or is it just an overall condemnation on the stupid men?
Well, that also could be true.
It's also that. Yeah. Okay, so Boney ends up confronting him with all of these things, right? So it's like, okay, so what's the deal with your wife? But also, Noelle is definitely her friend. Here's a photo spread of the two of them together. How did you not know about this? Also, I've been looking into your credit card records. You made all sorts of really expensive purchases, and we know that you were both unemployed, so you've got money issues. And also, you bumped up Amy's life insurance. I love him being like, she told me to do that.
Which, again, because I don't... Because I didn't see this movie without having read the book first. So I do wonder if you're watching this movie without having read the book, like, are you catching on to this yet? You know, are you thinking, okay, she's trapping him yet?
Yeah. I mean, like, at what point do you start to figure out, this has been a setup and Nick is the patsy?
And I will say, I don't think when I read the book, I realized it until I turned that page to part 2.
Yeah, no, I'll confess that I wasn't thinking that because I didn't have any reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, there were no signs for me. And then, of course, when you read back through it, you realize, it's because this is Amy presenting herself one way. And even when Nick is saying things like, these fucking treasure hunts, the 5th anniversary is blah, you just think, he's being a bit of a shitty dude. Like in a bad marriage.
Yeah, exactly. But I also don't know if I ever really believed that he murdered her either.
He seems too confused.
Yeah, right? Yeah, he seems too stupid.
I don't believe this man has the ability to execute a murder convincingly. So the final cherry on top of this is Boney does confirm that Amy was in fact pregnant. So he throws a glass and then he decides, let's lawyer up.
Yeah. But at this point, Boney doesn't believe him anymore.
No, yeah. So she's very disappointed in both him and herself. So this is where we get the baby stuff, the reveal that he wanted it and Amy didn't. And then we get a bit of a brief cross-cut montage. So we get Amy's voice where, she's going to say, like, I'm really worried that my husband's going to try to kill me. Boney finds her diary in Nick's dad's house in the stove. And Nick finds the woodshed in Go's backyard that is filled with all the expensive items as well as the final clue in the treasure hunt. And of course, he doesn't get to open it because we cut to black and then all of a sudden we're in Amy's point of view.
And Joe, I'm again, like, I don't, like, I was definitely at work when I was I turned this page and I was like, part 2, okay.
Where are we gonna go next? Trace, we need you to bust that table and welcome those other people. And you're like,
no,
I'm gonna have to I'm going to have to peace out because I got this book to read.
I got to finish this, this giant monologue that I just started.
Oh my God. Yeah. So we jump back in time. It is 2 hours gone on the day of Amy's disappearance, and this bitch is driving and intoning in voiceover how she is framing Nick for her murder.
And this is like an hour and 6 minutes into the movie, by the way.
Yeah, we have taken our time to set this up, but it's equal to what we get in the book. That first part of the book is quite long. And
yeah, it's almost half of it.
It's just so important for establishing this so that when the twist does happen, it pays off, right? Because if you do this too early, then it's like, well, who fucking cares? I didn't really know who Amy was. Mm-hmm. This feels like someone has quite literally pulled the rug out from under you.
100%. And this monologue it's a voiceover monologue that we're about to get, and it is 7 minutes long, and this is cut down from the book version.
Yeah. This was actually one of the more challenging sections. How much detail do I need to include in this? So we learn the steps for framing Nick. So they include befriending a pregnant idiot, racking up your credit card debt and increasing the life insurance, stealing the pregnant idiot urine so that you can pass it off as your own, staging the crime scene, cleaning and bleeding a lot, and then faking 300 diary entries, honoring the tradition of the special annual treasure hunt, and then finally killing yourself. I had completely forgotten that was the final piece of Amy's plan.
I know. She fully plans on killing herself to make sure he will go to jail and get the death penalty.
Yeah, I do love that little drive the dagger in all the way. It's not just that she wants him to go to prison, which I thought would be more appropriate because she would want him to have to sit there and know and be able to do nothing. Mm-hmm. But no, that's not enough for amazing Amy. She needs her motherfucking husband to die. Which, again, I think that just adds credence to the idea that she's a psychopath.
Yeah. So this cool girl monologue, which I think is kind of the biggest talking point of both the book and the film. But I did want to at least get how Flynn came up with it. So before we talk about it, this is what she says. So the cool girl monologue came about as a writing exercise. Whenever I kind of have writer's block, I don't let myself stop writing, but I'll back away and kind of approach things differently, like these old-fashioned college writing class exercises. And so, at the time, Amy didn't write quizzes. She wrote a column for a women's magazine.
Oh, she's a Carrie Bradshaw.
Yep. And I thought, I'll write a column from Amy's point of view, and I wrote 2 or 3 columns. And I wrote the cool girl column when I was in a fugue state, all in one afternoon. I never got up. I was just sweating over the keyboard. I was so into it. And I had never really articulated any of that before, and then I really liked it. But one of my rules about writing exercises is you are never allowed to put them in your book because it's just too tempting.
What?
I know. You try to shoehorn things that don't belong, so I didn't put it in the book for a long time, but I just liked it so much. And it did feel like it came from Amy. It did feel like it had to do with personas and trying on things. And so it did resonate with what she had been doing, so I felt it was fair play to put that in there. And I'm so glad I did, because that's the one thing I hear about all the time from people.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that anything about this character feels authentic because you're admitting to having, I don't know, some kind of relationship on the level with, as you said, the psychopath, right? A person who's willing to murder to get what she wants. And it's like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to admit to that. But there is something incredibly real about this. I don't even think just for women exclusively. It's so confronting to hear someone verbalize the things that we do to make ourselves sexually desirable to the person that we want to be with, right? The ways that we will change and alter ourselves due to societal pressures, gender expectations and that kind of stuff. Like this has that ring to it, right? And then it is also rude and crude and very I just think it's so conversational.
100%. And interestingly enough, there is one particular example of a cool girl that Flynn points out, like where she really thought about it when she was writing the monologue. It was Cameron Diaz's character in There's Something About Mary.
Oh my God, yeah.
She's like, I saw There's Something About Mary when I was in my 20s, and there's Cameron Diaz, who looks like Cameron Diaz, but she's also a doctor, and she loves hamburgers, and she starts out playing golf in the morning, and all she wants from a man is a guy who wants to take her to a football game, and she wants to eat hot dogs and drink beer. And I thought, wow, that's a cool girl. And then I thought, oh, right, she's invented by guys. Because it's all men that wrote that movie.
Yeah, that is true, right? And interestingly enough, I think that is one of the conversation topics that can carry over to Strange Darling is just these questions about gender roles and how much we perform them, but also what happens when we go against them. And I think for men, that is just so... It's something that we're not used to hearing. And I think for women, that's a lot of like, yeah, I have fucking felt that. But it does really reinforce why people say things like, oh, well, I only want to see, a rape revenge if it's written or directed by a woman. Right. Because it's a perspective I don't often see. Like, this is that kind of moment where I think people say, well, you can have a female character say this or act the way that Amy does because it is written by a woman and that feels more real, more authentic.
But not even so, though, because there are still people who call her a misogynist for writing this part.
Well, and let's be clear, just because you're a woman doesn't mean you can't be a misogynist.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I think that the fact that this became the kind of litmus test conversation starter for the film, like this is the piece everyone remembers about this movie. It's not even so much the twist, it's the cool girl monologue. Mm-hmm. And I think that means that she struck a fucking chord with a lot of people.
Well, because I think there's a lot of truth to this cool girl monologue. And some people I'm sure some people were either reading the book or watching the movie going, yep, like snap and preach, girl. And others were like, what? No.
Holy fuck. Okay. Or, listen to this fucking psycho bitch, blah, 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 blah. Like,
100%.
Women don't actually think that.
But yeah, I mean, this is, like, I seriously debated, just transcribing the whole thing. I was like, but no, that's not going to be worth it. But, it's just, y'all, if you have not heard, seen this movie, oh my God, just Google cool girl monologue, Gone Girl.
So good, so good. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little disappointed. I thought you would have it all ready to go.
I know. So I literally started transcribing it, and I was like, no, and then you're like, I'm not going to do it. No. I'm not going to do it.
Here's the thing. If it was a little shorter, then fine. But it is lengthy. It is full. So I get it.
I mean, because this is the first time we've seen Amy, true Amy. This is the first time in the movie. So this movie has basically an hour and 6 minutes of catch-up work to do to be like, yeah, this is that woman.
Yeah, and it's almost like shock treatment. It's like throwing someone into a tub of cold water because it is so confronting compared to the completely alternative version of now who we realize she was pretending to be.
Yes. But I guess that's a thing, though. So, because she says, when she meets Nick, it was true for her, but it's but she's also always been like this, as we will learn soon. But it's did she fool herself into thinking that she could have something quote unquote normal with Nick?
Well, the weird thing is because I agree with you. I think that it started out the way that we saw. Sure, was it movie magic, perfect embellishment?
Sure.
Probably. But I think she felt like she had found someone equal to her. And that's made even more clear in the book. There were a number of different types of people that she sort of tried on, like hats. And it was just this person's not worthy of me, or I don't feel like it's worth the effort. And then with Nick, it's also easy and they fit together so well. And they're making fun of other people who feel more like stereotypes. So I can see it being like that in the beginning. But then the minute Nick begins to disappoint her, it's like, oh, so you were just pretending this whole time. And of course, she never really truthfully acknowledges that she was also pretending during those moments, but she feels like she's the one who's been betrayed.
Yeah.
But I will say, I love that we're getting this monologue over images of her shopping at Walmart and chopping off her own hair and dyeing her hair like a mousy brown and shit. It's antithetical to the things that we see her doing, which feels perfectly complementary to the actual dialogue, right? she's not trying anymore.
No, not at all. And I will, because I truthfully, but until I listened to the commentary, I was like, oh, they must have like padded her or something, because I can't imagine her like gaining this weight because she has to go back and forth.
I know, right? Because the weight gain and loss is dramatic. I was like, oh, so we must have filmed all of the thin scenes first and then done something.
And sorry, to be clear, everyone, she's not fat, quote unquote. No. Like, it's just like she has
noticeably gained weight.
Yes, she has noticeably gained weight because Rosamund Pike is a statuesque stick of a woman.
Yes.
But also, because you know how we always talk about spoilers and trailers and stuff? David Fincher, I don't know if it was before he signed on for the film or shortly, or like when they were like getting the marketing ready, but he had something in his deal where he was like, no, like you cannot show any footage of Rosamund Pike past like the reveal part. The only thing you can show is the fantasy sequence where we see her corpse sinking into the water.
Right.
And they did put that in the trailer, which I thought was very smart.
Of course, yes. Because it makes us think that she's dead and that Nick is maybe guilty.
Yeah, but the studio was like, no, we have to show other stuff. To the point where
you fucking idiots.
To the point where they even wanted to show the scene where she gets out of the car at the end of the movie covered in blood.
Oh my God.
I know. Imagine? Like they wanted to put that in a trailer.
Of course they did. Of course that. I mean, here's the thing. We understand how movie marketing works where, yeah, you need to show the things that are going to sensationalize people or entice them to come out to the theater. But those are the wrong impulses.
Well, and so nevertheless, y'all, this sounded like, because David Fincher said it, this was a battle and one he almost lost. So next time you bitch about a spoilery trailer, like don't blame the filmmakers, because if David Fincher has trouble getting a studio to see his part with the marketing, like Joe Blow, like first movie is not going to have that either.
Yeah, that's going to be a battle for sure. Okay, so she's telling us all of this. Yeah, she's changing her appearance. She's checking into a shitty motel. And I mean, the funny thing is, you know, she's obviously dotying herself up, but I do love that she cannot condescend to have bad sheets. So she brings her own expensive sheets so that she can change the bed. But apart from that, we are laying low in shitty backwater kind of quote unquote redneck territory.
It's the Ozarks, yes.
Yeah. We do also see her hit herself in the face with a hammer. I mean, we don't see it, but we see her wind up to do it.
Yeah.
And not gonna lie, Titane called.
Yes. Now, why is she doing this at this point in time?
Yeah, I would have thought that she would do it before she checked into the motel, but she definitely wants a cover story that she is an abused woman hiding out. I think it just helps to sell, like, especially when we see the Greta character in a couple of scenes.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is the place that abused women hide out in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we hop back to the present, and this is where Nick and Go discover that the present Amy left for him for the 5th anniversary are 2 wooden Punch and Judy dolls, and we learn the troubling history of this, which is that, I found the fact that this is like a bit of a comedy routine with the dolls very disturbing, because when you pull back and realize, Punch beats Judy to death and kills their unborn child.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I ever heard of Punch and Judy. It was when I read this book.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's like a big, like, traditional, it's a British, maybe that's why, because I just didn't get it in America. But yeah, it's, it's weird though, because I feel like ever since I found out about it, I see these dolls in a lot of movies.
Yeah. There's even a couple of horror films. I think there's one called Punch and Judy.
Oh, there's a whole sequence in Charade where Audrey Hepburn has to like narrate like to Cary Grant like what's happening at the Punch and Judy puppet show.
Oh, interesting. Do you think Micah Monroe has seen it?
I don't think so. Okay. Everyone go listen to our Watcher and It Follows episodes.
There we go. Oh. All right, so we move ahead to July 6th. That is now one day gone, and Amy has set up her OCD calendar full of meticulous Post-it notes. So more Post-its. She and Boney have something in common, right?
I love the Post-it that says "Kill Self?" ?
Yep, indeed. And then, as I alluded to, we are introduced to Greta, who is played by Lola Kirk, and she looks similar to Nancy, which is the alter ego that Amy has adopted here. And they sit at the pool, they suntan, they talk about the trash taste that they have in men.
Yeah, this is, I actually love watching these scenes with these two women. I would have taken a whole movie with that because I just find it fascinating. But boy, I love that they get her.
Oh boy. It's well, I love it because it proves that Amy, for all of her planning, is not infallible, right? Like, she's really good at preparing when she knows who her prey is, but she doesn't have a good read on Greta.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, is that Greta, she doesn't exactly see through Amy. Like, she doesn't realize who Amy is, but like, she's the only one, like, when they're watching the news report later, she's the one that's like, I bet that woman was a real bitch.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she can see through the facade right into the TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, but we need to jump back to Nick. So it's now July 9th. It's 4 days gone. This is where Nick realizes, I'm fucked. I need to get Tanner Bolt to represent me. So he flies back to New York. And surprisingly enough, Tanner Bolt does believe him when he says, I think my wife is framing me for her murder. But it's not enough to just have one, crazy man with no wife and a lot of blood and financial problems and all this kind of stuff saying these sorts of things. Like, no one is going to believe Nick. So we need others to corroborate the story. So let's go talk to the men in Amy's life. And first up, we have Scoot McNairy's Tommy.
Like, how random he's in this movie.
I know. Yeah. Folks, if you are like, Scoot McNairy, how do I know him? He was on a great show called Halt and Catch Fire on AMC. Highly recommend it. But also, you probably just saw him in Speak No Evil, which we covered on the Patreon last month.
Yes. I would say he's almost unrecognizable here, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big role. He gets this one scene, but it is a big, important scene, and he does a really good job of it.
Yes, And so this is post Me Too. This is an interesting scene to have in a movie.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, so Tommy was accused of rape by Amy, and he pled out to avoid jail time, as he says he would not do well in jail. I hate it when movies say stuff like that, because we might as well just say, I hope you get raped in the ass, which I believe is something Amy hopes for Nick in the book.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, don't like it. But we discover that Tommy is now on like a sex offender registry. Obviously, he has difficulty finding a job. Like, his life has been irreparably damaged by Amy. And he maintains that these are false claims. And of course, when Nick is like, well, did you do it? He just flips it around on Nick and says, well, did you do it?
I mean, I believe this man, especially given that we quite literally see Amy falsify a rape later in the film.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So this is very much you can't always believe women, that I think is the other element, or maybe the main element that gets this film in trouble with feminists or gets claims of misogyny, because this does damage. But I would argue that this is very focalized through one particular woman, and the movie goes to great lengths to make sure we understand she is totally fucked up.
I may be in hot water for even saying this, but it's like, I just don't like the idea of being like, okay, a woman who is a villain who does really horrible things makes the movie misogynist. Now, granted, I know we are talking specifically about faking sexual assault here, but it's like, I don't know, to me, like that doesn't, like, the film isn't saying women do this all the time. It's just this one woman. So it's like, why does this one woman have to be the poster child for all women everywhere, you know?
Well, I think the thing that rattles people too, I feel like this would all go down easier if we just see her kill Desi. And we're like, oh my God, she lied about her husband hitting her or doing it. Well, maybe not even that. I was going to say, I feel like the sexual assault is the piece that people really get upset about, because that is the thing that women are not believed about. But the truth is that women also aren't believed about domestic abuse, and women aren't believed in cases of like murder for self-preservation. So no, I think I just undid my whole argument.
Well, and that's the thing is, like Amy knows all of this, and she uses that to her advantage. Yes. So, I mean, yes, like, are these bad things that she's doing? Yes. Is the film making it very clear that these are bad things this woman is doing? Yes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's a thing. Again, depiction doesn't equal endorsement here for me.
Oh God, no. And really, I feel like by the time we get to the end of the film, we realize like, that's why the ending is so satisfying, not to jump all the way to it, but these are both bad, fucked up people, and they deserve each other.
Yeah.
Yes. So we reveal that Amy did this, and she's a terrible person. And Tommy is like, well, I do love this line that Amy has graduated from being raped to being murdered. You're like, holy fuck.
Like, he like knew that from the news. He was like, well, she's not dead.
Yeah. Okay, so we do get a brief scene of Greta and Amy watching, pregnant Noelle go on the Ellen Abbott show, and this is where Greta calls Amy a bitch. She spits in her drink, and it's kind of like, all right, whatever. That's
okay, fine. Well, it's fine, but I love the reaction when Greta comes back and she drinks. It's Mountain Dew, by the way, and she just drinks and goes, oh, yeah.
This character, very, very amusing, yeah. Okay, so Nick is flying back from his trip to see Tanner Bolt as well as Tommy. So he's in the airport. We learn that Go has taken out a second mortgage on her house to pay for Tanner Bolt's representation.
And offers up $47,000 of her savings, which is all of her savings.
Yeah, it's like, no, Go is the best person in this movie. She is the only genuinely good person in the entire film.
100%. She's the only one speaking with any... Well, her and Tanner Bolt are fine.
Yeah. And then just in case you thought, oh, okay, well, people don't tend to sensationalize these crimes so they don't go down wild rabbit holes. Also, in this airport, as we're watching Ellen Abbott, we've got not just her and her guest on the show, but people in this airport lounge speculating on how close Nick is with Go. And one man even says, twincest?
Right?
Which I will confess, I mean, I feel like I have been guilty of making these kind of glib remarks. And I mean... It's one of the reasons I think that people have a very tenuous relationship with things like true crime is because we not just sensationalize it, but we turn it into entertainment, right?
Would you call this satire?
I think so. I don't think it's as sharp, and it's not the film's primary purpose, but it is an undercurrent of the entire movie, right? It's like the Ellen Abbotts of the world, even Sheila, whatever.
Yeah.
Like all of these kinds of shows that exist solely to spin hypotheses and make outlandish claims. And it's like, no, these are real people. Like, if this was a real case, like, Amy would probably be dead, and Nick probably would have killed her, and people to just be like, well, we've got a scoop. Yeah, ratings.
Yeah. I'm torn. But if it's not satire, it's at the very least commenting on it. It's making a critique, without a doubt.
Yeah, I will say... Amy is very enthused by all of this negative publicity for Nick. So we see her go out of the motel and she quite literally kicks up her heels.
Yes. I totally noted that. I was like, look at you, all happy.
Yep. And she is, in fact, so happy that she calls in the tip about the woodshed, which will pay off in a little bit. And then she removes the kill self ? Post-it. We don't need to do that anymore. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time with our confirmed queer representation in this film, Trace. Let's go to visit Desi Collins.
Again, really understated role from Neil Patrick Harris here, but he gives off creep from minute one.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, and maybe this is me putting myself into hot water, but I think that he's very convincing as a straight, lecherous creep. And maybe that's me being too generous and people would be like, oh no, he still reads queer to me. But I was surprised at his announcement in the film, particularly in this role, because I'd read the book. I knew who the character was. And I find him very convincing.
I guess just because I didn't watch How I Met Your Mother for all 10 years, which, by the way, this would have come out like less than a year after How I Met Your Mother ended its 10-year run. But yeah, I guess he is believing as like a womanizing straight guy on that show, so I guess I just bought into it here because I've seen episodes of that show, but at this point I didn't even care about whether I thought he was straight or not. I was just like, you're crazy, like you're a crazy person. But I agree with you. He passes, quote unquote.
There we go. Yeah. And we should note, this is not like his big scene. This is more or less his real introduction, because he actually gets lines.
Right.
We didn't really interact with him much at the volunteer center, but he's introduced at his palatial mansion. He's very well dressed, and you're right, he's giving off creepy weirdo vibes. But Nick is essentially there to see if we can get some kind of story, because, hey, did you really try to kill yourself after Amy broke up with you? Did you really go to an institution? Like, tell me all about it.
Mm-hmm.
And Desi just calls him rude and shuts the door.
Well, what else would you do?
Well, yeah. I mean, hi, stranger. Just because I saw you on TV doesn't mean I'm going to spill my secrets to you.
Well, it's also because he's still in love with Amy. He's never going to like Nick. As long as Nick is as long as Amy is still a viable option for him. I mean, whether he thinks that or not, he's never going to.
He always thinks it. So
yeah.
This guy's competition.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we move ahead to July 10th. It is now 5 days gone. This is when Tanner arrives in Missouri. So we have boots on the ground. Let's develop a strategy, which means we need to learn more about Amy, this tendency of hers to teach people lessons, more details about the treasure hunt and that kind of stuff. But Tanner wants to get out ahead of the police. So he thinks that we should come clean about the woodshed and the affair with Andy. And Nick is very much like, my public reputation is already pretty fucking bad, but Tanner is realistic. Like, it will come out.
Yeah.
So you might as well be the one to break it and look cooperative.
And it will be way worse if you were not the one to break it. 100%. Nick, it's just, come on.
Yeah, be realistic. You are shit at covering your tracks. Your mistress was fucking in Go's house 2 days ago or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that Tanner suggests getting out ahead of this is to go on the Sharon Schreiber show. And this is when he will confess the affair. Tens of millions of people will hate him, but then they will forgive him if he does it correctly. And this is where Nick starts to think, well, maybe there's another strategy we can adopt, which is actually trying to speak to Amy directly.
Well, because now they know she's alive, so it's and he knows, just like she knows him, he knows her, and he knows she is going to be watching that interview.
Indeed, yes. So, speaking of Amy, she is trying to still lay low, but she's hanging out with Greta as well as this new guy, Jeff, who... Boyd Holbrook?
I get this man confused with Joel Kinnaman all the time. I could not tell you the difference between the two of them.
I mean, one of them has an accent in real life and one of them has a Southern accent in real life. But yeah, they do look remarkably similar. It's funny. I feel like I often make fun of Boyd Holbrook as a not very good actor, but then he can disappear into roles. I mean, this character, Jeff, is a non-entity. He exists to show up here, obviously be threatening, and then abscond with all of Amy's money when he and Greta rob her. But he does it well.
Yeah. And, Fincher said he blew him away in his audition.
Oh. So I'm just thinking of Boyd Holbrook blowing somebody. Okay. So Amy is left with nothing. It basically takes them a day to figure her shit out, and then they just steal that money pouch from her, and it is over for her.
Yeah. Which I love this, and we never see these characters again. But I do love Greta's little piece of advice. Hey, be careful. There's a lot of people out there that are way worse than we are. We won't just leave you.
Which, ironically enough, I think you could read this as a kind of foreshadowing, because Amy is the worse version of them, right? She will steal and kill from Desi.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we jump ahead again to July 12th. This is now 7 days gone, and we are preparing for this Schreiber interview. And I do love this moment. Obviously, as I said, we don't have Bolt's wife who does this in the book, but Tanner and Go more or less just take turns pelting Nick with jelly beans every time he does something wrong. And it's entertaining, right? It's what media spin and preparation would probably look like. And I enjoy the glimpse behind the curtain. So we also see Desi picking up Amy at a casino. She's still doing her, I had to get away from Nick. He was abusing me. I've miscarried, blah, blah, blah. Please
Sob
take
story.
me home. Also, that guy's looking at me. Let's get the fuck out of here. Toot sweet.
Yeah.
So then we start to cross-cut between Nick meeting Sharon, who, as you mentioned, is played by Celia Ward. Love her. Literally not in this movie.
Yeah, she has, 4? Well, I guess maybe a little more, because we do see the interview. But yeah, she's barely here.
Yeah, it's a shame. Folks, this is where I will pitch an older show called Once and Again. She was fucking great in it. So basically, I didn't watch that show, but my parents did. And my mom really liked it, but my dad called it the dark show because he said every scene is so dark you can't see anything that's happening. And so whenever they were watching now, once and again, my dad was like, oh, that dark show. I thought you were going to say emotionally dark because it's basically about two people who are divorced. So they each have like a divorced spouse and then a child, and then they form a kind of like new mixed family. And it's a dramatic kind of family thing, but it did go to a lot of dark places in terms of the storylines because we had to keep the conflicts going over time.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my mom really liked it. I just like literally every time it was brought up, it was, oh, that dark show.
The dark show. Too funny. Okay. Yeah, so Sharon is the kinder, softer version of Ellen Abbott. So we brought her in because she will grill Nick, but she will be fairer and he can win her over. So I think that this is an interesting piece. So we're preparing for this and it's like just about to happen. And then all of a sudden he gets scooped because Andy is on the TV with Amy's parents at a press conference, and she is announcing, oopsie, we all had an affair.
And she's wearing this, like, what does Amy say, a Mennonite outfit?
Yeah. Because she's all buttoned up and
stuff. Mean, the collar alone. Like, did she just come off the Mayflower?
Yeah, it's too funny. It's very, very funny. But, okay, so we've been scooped. How do we recover from this? Because we still have to do the interview. Tanner doesn't want to. Nick does because he has figured out how he can both get to Amy, but also how he can get Sharon on his side. And I love that it's like, okay, we're going to do this. And then we don't get to watch it play out. We have to wait to watch it.
Which I wrote in my notes. We don't get to see this interview?
I know. Because initially I was pissed. Because in the book, we just go into it and we get to read exactly what happens. And in the film, you've actually got to wait for it.
Yeah, because we have to watch Amy watch it.
Yeah, so we do cut back to her and Desi. He's showing her around this palatial mansion. We immediately understand that she has traded in for somebody who is far more dangerous than we were led to believe. So he talks about how, like, anything she wants, he can get it for her. But also, there are cameras positioned all around the exterior of the house. And you're just like, oh no, this is a new kind of cage.
I love this, though, because we cut to Pike's face whenever he says there are cameras everywhere. And she is like, you can see her just processing everything. Like, fuck. Yeah. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah. And then he kisses her. And we end this section with him saying, I'm not letting you get away again.
Yeah,
like oh fuck.
And I know we don't have time to like add another like psychopath subplot to this. I mean, it is a subplot, but like we never get to see more of Desi's more nefarious
obsession.
Yeah, and like I mean, that's a whole nother movie in and of itself. But I would have liked to have seen it.
Yeah, there's a couple of really telling details that Flynn includes in the book where she talks about how He's basically got Amy trapped in glass. So the things that she liked when they were dating back in college, so like many years ago, he's got her favorite flower from the time, which she doesn't like anymore. He's got an entire room of them so that they will bloom all throughout the year. He's painted the entire house the color that she liked back then. And those kind of details where he's trying to preserve the image, this idealized perfect version. So he wants to make her the way that he remembers her. And you're like, oh, it's just a different variation of what she was doing with Nick.
Yeah. And this is kind of like going back to that kind of peek behind the curtain you were talking about earlier. Like I do remember in the book, like I felt catharsis when I was reading the Amy passages in these moments because she was actually scared in some parts of these moments. Is like, like I mean, because you know, like she has the power. She does figure out what to do, but in this moment, she's kind of like, oh, like
yeah, shit.
This might be worse than I thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, she had nothing. Like she had to decide who she was going to turn to, because it was either turn yourself in, go home, maybe go to your parents, but they don't have any fucking money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Desi is the best option, but she didn't realize it was going to be like this. And now she's got to come up with a brand new plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The problem is that, Desi has got his mind set on certain things too, right? So like she's come back to him and she doesn't look hot anymore. So he comes home with hair dye and they're going to get her back into, the line that he uses is he's excited for his reunion with Amy Elliott, as though she is not Amy Elliott because she does not, basically she's not fuckable hot Amy that he remembers.
Exactly. Oh, also, you will love to know that Pike is wearing a wig for like every scene of this movie, and that Fincher said that every shot of her wig, every shot of her, period, had to have digital touch-ups for her wig line.
Okay, because I did not realize she was wearing wigs.
No, like the opening scene, he was like, this scene was really problematic because of her wig.
Wow, okay. Good wig work for a change. Thank God.
Digital work.
Here's the thing. We put in the effort so that it's not distracting and terrible.
Maybe that's what contributed to the $61 million budget.
There we go. We had a wig budget and then a touch up the wig budget. Okay, so it's finally time to watch this interview with Sharon Schreiber.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and she's eating is she eating pudding or creme brulee?
I mean, I got the impression that it was something like low-fat yogurt because he is trying to thin her down. Oh,
yeah, because she's too fat. Yeah.
In the book, it's like he got her chips, but then he would only give her a certain number.
Ooh, see, I like that detail.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I will confess, I have done that kind of stuff to Brian where I'm like, no, I can't trust you. You'll eat the whole bag. So I'm like, you can have this many in a bowl.
Are you doing that because you don't want him to eat all of them and like not leave any for you? Or are you doing that because you're trying to watch out for his weight?
I'm doing it because I'm concerned that he will eat it all and then be very uncomfortable, but also because I want to save some for myself.
I was going to say.
Okay, so we're watching this interview. So Amy is watching it with total interest. Nick is saying all the right things. Desi is watching Amy watching Nick say all the right things, and he's like, maybe we should just turn it off. Maybe you shouldn't be so interested.
And that's the thing, because I love this from Pike too, because like you can tell she is genuinely interested. Like she is like, oh,
maybe I misjudged him.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we get to the end of the interview. We're back with Go and Nick. We're in the car, and Go is so excited because he fucking killed it. The reactions are great online, except, of course, that this is also when Boney shows back up because Amy's anonymous tip about the woodshed has paid off, and they have discovered, these are all the credit card items.
Also, because we get this payoff earlier because Patrick Fugit's character talked about, the robot dog. And then we just get this shot of the robot dog in the woodshed.
Yep. Because it's all these stupid, extravagant items where it's like, you would never buy that ordinarily, but you absolutely, certainly should not buy that when you are in massive credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
So Tanner reminds Nick that he has to stay quiet, and then we do some true or false with Boney about the contents of Amy's diary, because of course Nick wants to come clean and be like, no, she's framing me, but he kind of agrees to play along and be like, well, this is true, this is not true, that's not how I remember it, and so on.
Yeah.
But because she has the diary, all of these expensive items, all the other things we talked about earlier, and now the Punch and Judy club, which we are attributing to be the murder weapon, she arrests him.
I love her saying, too, like, we clocked that immediately in the fireplace. Like, the second we walked in the house and talked to you, we saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's real fucking bad at this.
He didn't notice there was a big stick in his fireplace.
Yeah. Well, he didn't notice the diary either, so
yeah. Well, but the diary was at his dad's house in the furnace.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. But he didn't notice it there either. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so we're back with Amy and Desi as they're watching this. He's very quick to remind her that she chose him and he's not going to force himself on her.
That, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I The phrasing of that threat is so bone-chilling.
No, because we're just frozen on Patrick Harris's face while he says this, but it's like, I feel like that's just code for I am going to force myself on you if you don't come around soon.
Yeah. It's like, we are going to have sex. You will pay me this way. And it's not just a matter of time, but I mean, I don't want to have to rape you.
Oh. Yes, right? It's like just a spineless little shit of a man.
Yeah, because he knows he has full control over her because she has no other options, which is why he's so threatened by Nick's televised address, because all of a sudden Nick is back to being competition.
Yes. Oh, God. Ugh.
Yeah. But it's okay, because Desi says he's going to move in tomorrow so that they can work on making her again. As if he would fucking know who she is.
Well, he's about to find out.
Well, this is true. Okay, so we make a big jump ahead. So we're 21 days gone. It's July 26th. Nick is released on bond. So he has been in jail for a little bit. And then we've got Amy back to her thin, svelte figure. She's back to the bob and the blonde hair. I will say, I think that this haircut looks very good on Rosamund Pike.
I 100% agree. I mean, like, she looks fantastic. And the way she just, like, tosses her hair as she is doing what she's about to do.
Well, yeah, okay. So basically we're playing perfect wife. So we're giving Desi coffee. We're, wearing a sexy negligee. We're aggressively kissing him goodbye so that we can bait the hook. And then she fakes this attack for the camera, basically playing it up like she has been injured and she's screaming for help.
So the cameras catch her. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's creating a new timeline. This is the new version of the diary.
Yeah.
So 8 days later, Amy has been simulating wrist restraints. So she's been, developing marks with the twine, and she's been raping herself with either a champagne or a wine bottle. Oh, boy.
It's a Chardonnay bottle, and I only know this because they gave Pike a choice of 2 different kinds of bottles to use, and she chose the Chardonnay.
Okay. Choices.
One logical question though. So okay, we have like all. Does she erase any of the video footage? Because I guess my only thing is with her story, about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can't they just look at like the 2 or 3 weeks that she was gone where she wasn't at the lake house? And I guess maybe her story is that she wasn't always at the lake house.
Yeah, like in the book, I can't remember what she says, but like she talks about how he put her in the trunk of his car and then he drove her and that kind of stuff. But yeah, her story doesn't entirely check out. I think it's why she ultimately ends up having to rely on Nick to corroborate part of it.
That is true.
Okay, so yeah, she's been preparing for this moment. Desi comes home. She initiates sex. He is like, yeah, let's do it. But he's very tentative. She's like, no, fucking fuck me.
This is pretty graphic, too. Like, I was real surprised by this.
Yeah, so then we basically do a basic instinct. So we reach under the pillow, we grab this knife, and we just slit his throat as he climaxes. Oh. And his blood is all over her Lady Bathory style.
But I also love the technique here, like, because we do like these like fade out, fade ins, like constantly throughout the scene. This and also like everyone I know, we have not talked about Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score that much. I think I said this in the Dragon Tattoo episode where like I find their scores like I don't pick up on them as much as I would a normal score because they're
complementary in the way that they don't entirely call attention to themselves, but they're also not quite as memorable.
Yeah, so I think they're really good at instilling a mood, but as like pieces of music, like I don't register them. Like I do in the scene, but it's like I'm not actively.
You forget it as soon as you stop watching.
Yeah. But this scene, I remember the score. It's mostly just like a bunch of but it's still really good.
Well, it perfectly complements, as you said, those kind of fade moments, right? Mm-hmm. And like we do this a couple of times in the film at very specific times, like often around the violence, but it definitely feels different and distinct. And I think that's probably also why you remember the music.
Thank you. But this, I mean, seriously, this, like the throat slit wound, this blood just pouring all over her. Like this is, this got the R rating.
Yeah. And I don't know if they talk about it. I feel like I saw people speculating, like, do we see Neil Patrick Harris's penis?
So we come real close. Like, I'm pretty sure we get pubes, but like, because trust me, I was looking.
Yeah, of course you were. Yeah. You're a pervert.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I literally sent you Ben Affleck's dick pic after watching this.
Well, because you do see Ben Affleck's dick in this movie.
This is true.
Trust me, I had to go back like 4 times to pause it at just the right moment to see his dick. But boy, oh boy,
Trey,
did I see it.
Say it properly.
If you pause it just right, you can see his penis.
Yes, you can.
and you can.
Look, folks, we posted it on our social medias. If you're not following Horror Queers, then you're missing Ben Affleck's penis. It's up there. Okay, so August 4th, 31 days gone. Nick awakens to find his bloody, stumbling wife coming up the drive to him. He collects her in his arms. As she passes out for the cameras, he whispers, "You fucking bitch."
And it was so funny because I remember when I first saw this, I was like, why doesn't he call her a cunt? But that's because we get that later.
Yeah. So, cut to the hospital. She's telling this fabricated story about, once again, she was abducted. She was raped by Desi.
I love scenes like this when it's, okay, I know this is kind of going into the misogyny because this is a woman who is faking rape, who is really playing into the idea of like, believe all women.
Yeah.
But there's something so funny about it. So not like, but I love scenes like this where characters are playing into like societal standards to like get what they want.
Yeah. I mean, it's once again very much confirmation. Oh, God, she knows how to work the system because she is a fucking lunatic. But watching the people kind of eating out of the palm of her hand because she knows just what to say to get them on her side.
Except for Boney. Thank God. I'm so happy that Boney is like in on this. Like she get, but again, like Amy just being like, well, if you weren't so incompetent, maybe you would have found me sooner.
Yeah. She knows exactly how to dress down the one person she doesn't have buying it.
Or when she's talking about Disney, she's like, oh, I've encouraged him. And the other cop is like, you cannot blame yourself.
Yeah, it's darkly funny. It's troubling. It's all of those things at once.
Yes. But yeah, this is all great. Boney's not buying a single bit of it. And Amy is back.
Yeah, she's gotten away with it, at least for now. So Nick takes her home. People literally cheer and applaud. And the facade drops, though, as soon as we close the door. So as soon as we're out of the limelight, we're away from the police and the doctors, we are trying to cut this shit. So he wants answers, and she wants to make sure he's not mic'd. So this is when we get naked in the shower. And you can see his penis.
I can't believe... Hey, because this is the first time she's showering. So they didn't, like, clean her off at the hospital?
Yeah, it's a little surprising. I gathered that they probably would have tested her.
The blood,
but even the idea that they wouldn't have said, here, you can go into this bathroom and wipe yourself down. But knowing Amy, she probably would have said, no, I just need to get home.
Go home, yeah. Because she pulls the whole, oh, I'm so tired. And she, like, faints almost.
Yeah. So, after the shower, he tells her that once things die down, he's 100% going to be leaving her, and she just kind of treats him like a child and says, well, why don't we wait and see? Why don't you sleep on it? So she reassures him almost like you would a baby, and she pats the bed, and clearly she's like, you can stay if you want to. It's fine. Like, everything's out on the open, because I think in her mind, they have reset. They are obviously not the couple that they were when they began, but they are back at the same level. They understand who the other one is. So in her mind, it's like, cool, let's kickstart this whole charade again.
I mean, I think when/if they ever have sex again, it is going to be explosive sex.
Jeez. I mean, probably a little bit violent, where I can imagine them beating the shit out of each other.
Kinda. Yeah, that's the sequel.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so he does not bite. He ends up going into the spare bedroom, locking the door. But when he wakes up the next morning on August 5th, she's there. She's making crepes. We've got Ellen Abbott on the TV, and now she has turned her attention to Desi. So she's doing all the same things, only with a different person because a different man has taken over the limelight. And Amy is playing up their fairy tale when we go to the volunteer HQ so that we can thank everybody for all of their hard work.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we start jumping ahead a little bit quicker. August 9th, it's 5 days home. Nick unpacks this fucked up marriage that he has with Boney as well as Go and Tanner. So this is kind of the last hurrah. Is there any way that we can get her? And Nick is like, no, because even though she's back, she doesn't fucking trust me. So she's not going to say anything when she thinks I might be wired. Tanner Bolt is like, I mean, I get what you're saying, but now you've got book deals, TV deals, like you franchise the bar. So in a way, you've kind of made out pretty well.
I'm so happy this scene is here. If only I'm so happy that Boney is present for this scene. Like right. I needed this to happen. I wish Fugo was there too, but nevertheless.
Jesus, you've got a weddie for Kim Dickens. Holy cow.
No, just the character. Like, I'm so glad this character knows. Like, we know that she knows. But I would have liked to have seen Gilpin, that's Fugit's name, Gilpin find out and be like, oh yeah, he was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's just not enough time.
No. And Boney's the more important of the two anyway.
Truly, yeah. So Tanner goes home and we jump ahead 5 weeks. So we are now up to September 9th and Amy tucks Nick into bed. So we have advanced the relationship. We're not locking doors when we go to bed at night. And it's because she would never hurt him. Like in a way, this is her ideal. She has gotten the Nick that she wanted back because he is actively paying attention to every little fucking thing that she says, in part because he is terrified of her, but also because he's trying to catch her in a lie, but he is attentive Nick.
100%.
Dutiful husband.
Yeah, but he still wants to leave. He still plans on leaving her at some point.
Yeah, we actually see him practicing telling the truth because we set up 2 weeks later an interview with Ellen Abbott. She is coming to the house. And Amy tells him, I need you to do your part in order to feel safe. And his part is coming clean about things like the domestic abuse, not just being a shitty husband, but also the credit card debt, the life insurance. Like, she needs him on board. We need to get our story straight. And he's like, no, fuck you, bitch. And this is when she drops the hammer. Hey, remember all the baby shit? Yeah, I'm actually fucking pregnant because I went and got your sperm from the sperm bank.
And this is when we get our big blow up.
Mm-hmm. So things get physical. This is when we're dropping the C word. And she embraces it, baby. Yeah, you know when? She is... have you got it?
I got it. Okay, so yeah, he slams her against the wall, calls her a fucking cunt, and she says... I'm the cunt you married. The only time you liked yourself was when you were trying to be someone this cunt might like. I'm not a quitter. I'm that cunt.
Yeah. Well, and she even continues. She says, I killed for you. Who else can say that? Because in the book, we do a lot of like, oh, maybe I could get back together with Andy. And it's just like, yeah, guess what, Nick? Women are ruined for you because you will never have a woman, not just this fucked up, but a woman who would go to this length to get you because she got you so well. She understood you so well. She was so disappointed in you that she was willing to fucking frame you and send you to the big house for execution. Like, you will never have a cunt like this.
Yeah, I think I genuinely forgot, like, because by the time Amy comes back, there's still 20 minutes left of the movie. So I forget, like, I guess I just feel like I remember them. Yeah, she comes home, they stay together at the end. No, we have like all of this epilogue to go through.
Yeah. I will say it feels a little bit choppy with some of the time jumps. Some of the scenes are like a little brief. I'm not going to say I want an extra 10 or 15 minutes on this already fairly lengthy film, but I think I also would have watched it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, you know what? Limited series.
There we go. Yeah.
Just Gillian Flynn's books need to be limited series.
There we go. So she does continue by saying, like, all of this hurt, the control, the pain that they've inflicted on each other, that's what a marriage is. And if I don't know something more realistic and simultaneously cynical, this feels like the marriage equivalent of the cool girl speech.
Yeah, no.
It's like, fuck, okay.
It's very cynical.
Yeah. So they have to do their parts, which means doing this interview and sticking to the script, which is what he does because the baby is in the mix and it's the thing he always wanted. It's the thing Amy said she wasn't going to give him, but he can't walk away from that. He needs to be a father to this child. So I find it deeply upsetting, this conversation he has with Go, where she's crying in the kitchen and she worries that he actually wants to stay with Amy and it's not just about the kid. And I think that once again, Go is speaking truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we fade in on this Ellen Abbott interview. I do love the moment where she says, I got you the robot cat to go with your robot dog. And he's like, God, I hate you. You're such a fucking bitch. Missi Pyle, ladies and gentlemen.
That dog, man. Sorry, it's a cat, she is. I'm sorry, it's a cat. Yes. Yeah, it's just, the way she brushes off all of his, I'm glad that he at least does confront her, but she is not fazed by any of it.
No, because I'm sure she's been in this situation before. The number of times she gets it right is probably equal to the number of times she gets it wrong.
100%. I just got where the story takes me.
Yeah, she does. So Nick and Amy declare themselves partners in crime, and this is where they make the public announcement that they are expecting, so they will become parents. And then we're back to the opening voiceover as we see Amy from Nick's perspective as he is petting her hair, and it's very much, what will we do?
End
credits.
Film. Yeah. Because this film got a B cinema score, I think, and okay. I can guarantee you it's the ending because I'm telling you, I totally agree with you. But when I finished the book, I remember being like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. Why would he ever stay with her? And and even the baby, I was like, no, the baby is not a good enough excuse. Like that baby can just go live with her. It's fine.
No, I think it is a very challenging, and I'm going to say, I don't like to use this word just willy-nilly, but I think it's a brave ending because there were a lot more conventional, easy way out to end the book and by proxy, the film. And I really applaud that they stuck to this because this is not going to work for everybody. It's not a popular, safe choice.
Well, and I wonder if that's why, though. I mean, I'm sure there are many reasons why Gillian Flynn made that part of a deal where it's like, no, I get to write the first draft of the screenplay. But I do wonder if it was like, you cannot change this ending. Do not change this ending.
Yeah, because I do think that it's an integral part of the social commentary, right? Because we are back to playing roles. Like this whole movie is about performing the way that people expect you to perform. And this idea that what brings them back together is playing the perfect parents, right? We couldn't make it work as a couple. The marriage was fucking disastrous, but maybe we can have a baby to save the fucking marriage.
Yeah, well, which is so funny because that's what they were fighting about earlier in that flashback from years ago. Where it's like, you really want to be that family that like has a baby to save their marriage?
Yeah, but Trace, now they're rich because they've got the book and the movie and the franchise bar.
I mean, honestly, you know what? Maybe I'd stay in that relationship for that, to be honest.
No, God, no. Can you imagine having to be that? That's the thing. I think Go says something about like, you're going to do this for 10, 15, 18 years for this child. And I'm just like, that is a long time. Like they didn't survive 2 years in Missouri before she tried to send him to the electric chair. You're going to make it 18 years for this fucking kid?
Yeah, I think they are.
Good luck, kids.
Oh, boy. Well, that is Gone Girl, everybody. Joe, what are your final thoughts?
Okay, so as I said, I'm going to leave this with a Gillian Flynn quote.
Okay.
So this is actually press that she was doing back when Sharp Objects came out. So she was asked, I gather, about her horrible female characters, and this is what she says. I particularly mourn the lack of female villains, good, potent female villains, not ill-tempered women who scheme about landing good men and better shoes as if we had nothing more interesting to war over, not chilly wasp mothers, emotionally distant isn't necessarily evil, not soapy vixens, merely bitchy doesn't qualify either. I'm talking violent, wicked women, scary women. Don't tell me you don't know some. The point is, women have spent so many years at girl powering ourselves to the point of almost parodic encouragement, we've left no room to acknowledge our dark side. Dark sides are important. They should be nurtured like nasty black orchids.
And see, I love that. That's such a great quote because I find it so interesting, and maybe this is also a gendered thing because people, but ask her, like, how do you come up with these like dark stories? And it's like, I don't know if you ask a lot of men those questions,
Exactly. I just feel like Flynn has this capacity, like she almost has a no bullshit filter. Which I find very admirable. But yeah, she refuses to say that women are simple and nurturing and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, they can be all of those things. But like she's saying, there's also this dark, nasty, violent, horrible side because they are fucking people. And until we get that kind of representation, whether you want to say this movie is misogynistic or it's disgusting or it's, doing horrible things for women who make accusations against men, like, sure, it can be all those things, but we also need to acknowledge that that is a part of who women are. And I think that that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be complicated.
I 100% agree.
Because I feel like you and I would say the same thing about depictions of queer people.
Yeah. Well, and I will confess, I think there was a time where I was very much like, no, like we can't do that. We have to be
right.
But no, yeah, by all means. Like, honestly, I want a queer villain.
Yeah, like we can't speak for all members of the queer umbrella, but the reality is like, particularly if you and I are speaking from our personal points of view, I'm totally down with a queer villain who can be just a terrible person, because I think that I've met a bunch of terrible queers. Like, we absolutely exist. Mm-hmm. So we need to have them out there on the screens as well.
Yeah. That, yes. Yeah. I don't have anything else to add to that. I love this movie. I love this book. I love Flynn's writing. I'm so glad that like it turned out as well as it did, because I mean, how often do book adaptations turn out this good,
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of great adaptations, but this one in particular feels like there's a bunch of places it could have gone wrong.
I guess here, let me, how often do film adaptations of like really popular kind of like pulpy potboiler books, like the Oprah's Book Club books, how often do those really live up to the material?
Yeah, but not as often.
No, but great movie. Love it. Pike should have had Pike deserves an Oscar. Pike deserves an Oscar. I won't say that she deserved it over Julianne Moore, because she's good in that movie.
There we go.
All right, everyone. Well, before we announce what we're covering next week, some quick housekeeping. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you will get 334 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Hannibal Season 1, Episode 10, It's What's Inside, Apartment 7A, Salem's Lot, and plus a new bonus episode on, oh boy, Freeway 2, Confessions of a Trick Baby. And of course, our brand new audio commentary for the month will be on Wes Craven's New Nightmare for its 30th anniversary.
I know. Kind of feeling old.
Old. I know, I was definitely alive when this one came out, so I'm like, oh right, I'm over 30 years old now. That's
there you go. Yes, you are over 30.
That is something. But Joe,
yes,
what are we covering next week?
Well, as I said, the movie that is celebrating an anniversary, but you were not alive for, is the 50th anniversary of the Texas Chainsaw fucking Massacre. So let's go and spend some time with that anniversary film and a little diva we call Sally Hawkins.
I didn't hear a space between chain and saw. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right. Yes. Very important to note. We have to do it properly.
Very important. Juggernaut of an episode coming next week, y'all, so be prepared. But until then, we can cross out Gone Girl.
Indeed, and cross out horror queers.